Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 391. Jun Moxie's Magnificent Plan. The reason wasn't him. It was the Hongjun Pagoda's aura. It was the bane of that sinister power since it was the purest aura in all of existence. In fact, it was the aura with the most vigor since it was the aura of life. That is, it was the force of life. The entire world had originated from primal chaos. And nothing can deceive the force of primal chaos since everything had been derived from it. The Hongjun Pagoda inside Jun Moxie was the most essential source of this power. However, it's only natural that one would have to adjust according to the local setting. Otherwise, Jun Moxie would lose the advantage of the miraculous effects of the Hongjun Pagoda's power. Jun Moxie had always been very enthusiastic about the Tianfa forest. And he suddenly got an idea after he was finished assisting Big Bear and Long Crane with their breakthroughs. He had never been able to stand the world's clamor. Nor could he live a chaotic life. In fact, Jun Moxie was extremely tired of all that turmoil. Young Master Jun's journey had recently come to a start in this world, but he had already begun to hope for a secluded place to lead his life in peace. I will fulfill my responsibilities one day. Then, I will find myself a quiet place and settle down there to lead a peaceful life. And the Tianfa forest was an ideal place of seclusion for Jun Moxie. In fact, even the snakes inside the Tianfa forest seemed far more pleasant than those high and mighty humans to Jun Moxie's eyes. And this was because this place was free of the scheme and plots that had plagued the outside world. Jun Moxie hated the scheming and the plotting. He would indulge in the scheming at times. But he had always preferred a direct confrontation. You want to see who's more powerful? Why don't you take a swing at me? Why beat around the bush? Why waste time with the nonsense? In fact, Jun Moxie's idea could perhaps be considered a grand design. I will change the society's rules if I ever become the supreme in this world. And I will restructure this world with my own methods. No one will go against my rules. Even the spirit Xian experts and great masters won't be able to become the exceptions. I don't wish to rule the whole world. But I want the world to understand what I want. The Xian experts will have to take a test every year. There are different levels within Xian cultivation. So, each level shall have its specific clothing and color. One shall get a new color of clothing once they would reach a new level. And they will have to continue wearing their older clothes unless they've reached a higher level. The divisions would be clear if this is implemented, just like they used to be in my previous life, all the way from kindergarten to university. And the Tianfa forest will be the seat of authority. Tianfa will be the place from where these rules will be issued. And that's because this is the place of Jun Moxie's future residence. Jun Moxie even thought of prescribing hats to every division of rank. And this brought a smile to his face. This was because Jun Moxie could suddenly imagine a scene where two people meet and wish to fight after they had quarreled for a while. However, they would then see each other's hats, and then shake hands and resolve the issue. Ah! You're a green hat. I'm a black hat. I'm far below you in rank. What's that? Let's go. Let's go and have a drink. It's my treat. Yes, it is. Look at how ugly your black hat is. Look at how wonderful my shiny green hat is. I genuinely admire the green hat you've put on. You're too kind. You flatter me. You can also wear a green hat one day if you work hard. Perhaps I could achieve that with your guidance. Ha ha. Jun Moxie thought about the scene, and how he had gotten carried away. He couldn't help but burst into a loud laughter as a result. This sudden and impulsive thought may have seemed like a joke to him at this time. However, Jun Moxie could never have imagined that it would become the premier law of the Xian continent for the thousands of years to come. It would be called the law of the evil monarch. It would remain unchanged for millennia. And it would all have come from this. The Lion King and the Monkey King had started to believe that their incurable injuries would soon be treated. And they couldn't help but feel relaxed. Why wouldn't they feel happy and excited? Why wouldn't they feel relaxed? Jun Moxie came back to himself after a long while passed. He then chuckled and said, "We shouldn't delay this any longer if that's the case. 6th and 7th. Come to me right now. I'll look at you right now, and you will turn back into your human form. That should also help you in drinking wine. Anyway, these beastly forms look very inelegant around the wine table." Jun Moxie thought. This is the first time I'm drinking inside TNFA. Would I genuinely have to toast drinks with a monkey and a lion? That would be very awkward. They will still remain a monkey and lion once they transform into human forms. But they will at least look like humans. Moreover, wouldn't this help in setting the path for the future? Therefore, the young Master Jun was very proactive at this time. The Lion King could barely contain his fervent tears. His white hair trembled. In fact, he resembled an excited puppy as he came in front of Jun Moxie and crouched down. The Beast King's tail was wagging. But he was so emotionally moved that his tail wagged at a very high frequency and slammed into the wine cup Big Bear held in his hand. Consequently, the cup of wine was thrown far, far away. The other Beast Kings burst into laughter. Jun Moxie didn't care about it either. However, he didn't waste any time as he raised his hand. He simulated the Hongjun Pagoda with his body's aura, and a lofty aura burst out with a loud sound. It shone brilliantly in the sky as it did. The other 5 Beast Kings recoiled in shock. Jun Moxie had used a swift and powerful method in order to facilitate a quick fix in this instance. In fact, he had gone to the extreme of his limits. It was going to be morning time soon. However, he didn't have much time to waste. This extreme method obviously wasn't similar to the one he had used when he had helped the Bear and Crane Kings with their breakthrough. Their breakthrough had been very gentle. However, the aura surged through the Lion King's meridians at a very fast pace, and took him past the breakthrough barrier in an instant. And the unimaginable and tyrannical impact of this violently surging aura left the spirit-level equivalent Lion King to raise his head and give out a blood-curdling screech as his mouth spat out blood like an arrow. After that, the pestering cold aura that had remained accumulated inside the Lion King for the past 60 years was expelled from his body. In fact, his condition seemed like that of a dog that had been beaten by a beggar's stick, which had then resulted in a thin arrow of blood to splash out from his mouth. The violent aura that had surged between the heaven and earth was done with its mission. It then cycled warmly through the Lion King's meridians to ensure no cold aura was left inside them. And it removed any sinister aura that had still remained there. The very able young master then raised his head and pushed the Lion King aside even though the Beast King's eyes were still closed. He then spoke up in a cold voice. Next one. His manner of speaking was cold and tyrannical. In fact, it was like that of a doctor who had gone to elementary school for an immunization program, and had called for the next student even though the needle wasn't yet out of the previous one. What? It's already done. This is miraculous. Isn't it very miraculous? The Monkey King trembled as he came to Jun Moxie. He then occupied the place which had previously been occupied by the Lion King. However, he wasn't prepared when he felt the pressure on his shoulders. Moreover, this pressure was as heavy as a mountain. The young master had already placed his hand on the Monkey King. So, the pure aura had quickly entered the latter's body. The Monkey King felt a fit of comfortable sensation and wanted to groan to express his elation. However, he was unaware that a gut-wrenching and devastatingly painful sensation would shoot through him the next moment. His teeth almost broke off as he screeched, and a black arrow of blood shot towards the trees from his mouth as this happened. This is painful, extremely painful. How can such a painful and torturous method be used to treat an illness? This is too extreme a method. The Golden Monkey King was in the midst of thinking this when he suddenly heard a shout of ecstasy from his side. He was very preoccupied and in extreme pain. However, he still looked to his side from the corner of his eyes. And what he saw left him to open his eyes wide. In fact, they had been opened to their very limits. My God of beasts! Good Mother of God! This is a miracle indeed. This is truly a miracle. A strange yet familiar white-clothed tall figure was standing beside him. This is Lion King. My God! This method works so quickly. This is such a quick result. The Monkey King felt envious and relieved at the same time. This pain isn't a problem as long as my injuries can be healed. What's this insignificant pain if my injuries can be healed? Let the pain be fiercer. The Monkey King suddenly forgot the excruciating pain he was feeling at this moment. Instead, he started to feel ecstasy, enrapturing ecstasy. He couldn't help but feel very happy, and started to laugh in a very wild manner as a result. However, that sound of wild laughter startled the other Beast Kings. In fact, even the heavenly aura which had been flowing from Jun Moxie's hand fluctuated to some extent. Why are you laughing, buddy? Have you gone mad from the excruciating pain? You won't kill me, right? The Monkey King was laughing in ecstasy even though he was in excruciating pain. One could say that his level of forbearance had transcended to mythical levels. He's really a great man. That dark aura left the Monkey King's body along with the black blood he soon spat out. Jun Moxie then said, "Great. Now everyone can drink the wine properly." Jun Moxie then looked up and saw that the 6 Beast Kings were looking at him with baffled expressions. He recalled that this expression was something similar to the one he had seen in the eyes of the Himalayan pilgrims in his previous life. It was full of fanaticism. It was indeed fanaticism. Extreme fanaticism. It was like a Buddhist monk had gotten to see Buddha himself. Or a Nazi who had suddenly seen Adolf Hitler. He was their idol now. He was like a god to them. They were whining and whimpering, they were extremely touched. Jun Moxie looked at the 6 Beast Kings in their human form as they stood in front of him, and felt very satisfied. He could have easily forced them to stop thanking him by saying one phrase. "Do you think I helped you for your thank yous?" And those simple words, those very simple words would have left the 6 Beast Kings to ponder. Yes. That's right. There would be no words to thank him for such great kindness. Words of thanks to express my deep gratitude would carry the weight of a feather. What meaning would they even have? This very able and helpful person may come to our area again. And all of us must do everything in power to give him any assistance he needs if he ever asks. We won't stint even if we end up losing our lives for his sake. Why would we put our feelings in words and ruin this atmosphere? The Beast Kings were feeling the exact same way. Hence, they came up with the same train of thought as well. Therefore, none of them expressed their gratitude in words. However, all of them were expressing their gratitude towards this mysterious and skilled man with their actions and expressions. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 392. The Ultimate Objective. Jun Moxie slowly continued to drink the wine. And the young master was eventually made to understand that the so-called Xian beast hierarchies. It turned out that the Xian beasts hierarchies were much harsher and delicate than the Xian levels of humans. A Xian beast would have to cross one more hurdle after they had reached the peak of level 9 in case they wanted to become a Xian beast king. And this hurdle was the challenge they would have to make to the then Xian beast king. They would only be able to transform their body once they had succeeded in this challenge. Some would change forms at the peak of level 9, and some could never do it throughout their lives. The peak of level 9 was followed by level 10. However, this breakthrough was the most difficult one for a Xian beast. A Xian beast would automatically be considered a Xian beast king if the said individual could take human form at the peak of level 9. However, they would only be considered a genuine Xian beast king once they had stepped into level 10. In fact, they would then be considered a true Xian beast king. And this was different from being the Xian beast king of a single race of beasts. Jun Moxie had helped Long Crane and Big Bear make this difficult breakthrough a short while ago. But that was only the first step. And it was obvious that they would have to face more of such mountains as they'd go forward. However, Long Crane informed him that no one except their sage king had ever reached that realm. Therefore, he didn't mention much about it. Jun Moxie grabbed a strange wine cup and muttered, "So, you two are basically the primary Xian beasts of level 10. And those 4 Xian beast kings have taken their forms after they've reached the peak of level 9. The 6 Xian beast kings nodded. "I will refine the pills from the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit, and give them to you. And your level should go one step further when that happens." Jun Moxie said this with uncertainty. The young master was confident in his ability to refine those divine pills. But he hadn't tested them. So he was unaware of the extent of their effect. The eyes of the 6 Xian beast kings were shining at this time. In fact, their eyes had coincidentally started to shine at the same time. "We'll advance by another step. We've made a breakthrough only recently. But we'll get to do it again after 3 years? My God. This speed is amazingly fast." The beast kings of the past had never made breakthroughs with such speed. 3 years wasn't a short period for humans. But it was a very short period of time in the long lives of the Xian beasts. It was important to know that talking about advancing another step was very easy. But the gap between the 2 ranks was very large. The 6 Xian beasts were breathing in a rushed manner, and their eyes were brimming fervent admiration. This was followed by some silence. After that, Long Crane spoke up with a stammer, but it seemed as if he was impatient as well. "Great Senior, you wish to refine those divine pills. But don't you lack some important herbs for those?" Everyone else picked their ears as those words were spoken. "Alas, it's true. But I only lack a few kinds of herb." Jun Moxie let out a long sigh at first. Then he suddenly opened his eyes. "How did you know that I'm missing some herbs?" Long Crane chuckled and replied, "That was a guess. The seniors possesses great skills. So He would have already handed over the pills if he had all the necessary herbs. But the senior said that he'll give us those pills after 3 years. That ought to mean that the senior still requires more herbs. And it may be assumed that those herbs aren't ordinary, right? Crane King genuinely deserves his title. His thought process is meticulous and extraordinary. Jun Moxie smiled. His tone was uncertain as he hesitated and said, "Yes." How could the refining process of such efficacious pills be comparable to something normal? The 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit is very rare. But it's only one ingredient at the end of the day. I still need to collect a massive amount of the other herbs before I can commence the liquid extraction. Many powerful and magical herbs will be mixed together into one. And the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit will be used to aid in it at a later stage. It is only then that I will be able to refine those unmatched divine pills. Jun Moxie's tone was heavy as he continued to speak. The Xian beasts' kings had held their breaths as they listened to him with their ears erected. This unmatched pill would have a huge potential. It will be able to increase the life of an ordinary person by 100 years or more. A Xian expert could also take it. An Earth Xian expert would become a level 2 Spirit Xian expert in merely a few months' time with the help of this pill, maybe even stronger. Moreover, there's no chance of an accident since the body of the user will be under no threat of exploding. And that's because the pills will work in accordance to a person's cultivation and will spread out their aura in a gradual manner. It can be said that it is neither frightening nor dangerous. It can genuinely be called the divine medicine that seizes the heavens' fortune. There was a sound of collective gasps. The eyes of the 6 beast kings turned as round as copper bells. And their bodies started to shudder with excitement. Earth Xian to level 2 of Spirit Xian? Life increased by 100 years? Neither frightening nor dangerous. My God! This is a divine pellet. This is crazy. This is something we've dearly yearned for. Dang! Dang! How many herbs are you missing? We can think of a solution together. Please don't get me wrong. The senior has remarkable powers, but he's still one man. Our strength isn't as remarkable as the senior's. But we are far more than one person. That should be able to count for something. Big Bear's eyes had become huge and round, and they had also started to emit a wolfish green light. However, he had spoken in a very gentle manner. Yes. Yes. Our Tian Fa is very huge. I'm sure that we can help the senior collect those heavenly herbs very quickly. The enthusiasm of the other beast kings also shot up to the sky. Many of them had spoken up while licking their lips. They obviously seemed very greedy at this time. Well, that's also good. Everyone wants to help. And that will save me a lot of unnecessary work and time in my search. In fact, it will be very beneficial. Jun Moxie pondered for a while before he finally agreed to it. And this made the faces of the beast kings light up with happiness. The herbs which I don't have are dragon beard grass, phoenix tail flower, 9-knot lotus, persistent severing root, tricolor manila grass, and 7 colors lotus root. Jun Moxie spoke with honesty. In fact, he was rather blunt as he named them in a long-drawn flow. He then took a short break to catch his breath before he continued onwards with the list. 1,000 years ginseng, white vermilion fruit, 9 nether grass, 9 profound root, and so on. A higher ranked herb will obviously be better. And it will be better if you can get as many as possible. The 6 beast kings had been stunned by this. The Falcon King had the most alert mind amongst them. And He had quickly torn off a large scrap of bark from a tree in order to use it as a scroll. He then used his claws to write everything down from memory. However, his wrist had started to ache by the time Jun Moxie finished. Then, Jun Moxie related the details about how each of those plants looked, which environment they grew in, how to pick them, and so on. The Beast Kings listened extremely calmly and meticulously. In fact, they even held their breath for the fear that they might miss a tiny bit of detail which could later turn out to be crucial to the important matter of their advancement. I'm aware that collecting these precious and extremely rare materials at once would be impossible, even if the entirety of TNFA's strength is used. So, you can collect as much as possible at one time, and you can keep dispatching someone to Tianxiang City and deliver it to the Jun family while you prepare the next batch. Anyway, I will be visiting the Jun family at regular intervals. Jun Moxie chuckled. Ah, you can be responsible for collecting herbs inside TNFA. And you can meet me in the extreme north to collect your pills in 3 years' time. We'd get better results if we follow this two-pronged approach. Jun Moxie thought. This matter won't take long if we do it like this. I also have to take a trip to the north. This matter with the herbs is only one of several others. So, I might as well do them at once. Third uncle must be going crazy in wait. There's a beautiful woman on a snowy mountaintop, and she has been looking forward to his arrival in hope for 10 years. How many 10 years could there be in one life? How many decades can a pair of lovers wait? Would they wait till their hair turned white, and they became old and senile? What would they do even if they were united then? Besides this, there was the matter of the Dongfang family's vow. Therefore, that snow sword mountain needed to collapse. And Jun Moxie genuinely wanted to see the snow sword mountain since its collapse would make for a wonderful sight. In fact, the young master had already prepared his plans to bring about such a heavenly and impressive wonder. And it would be more suitable to get this matter done as soon as possible. Therefore, Jun Moxie had been making his preparations. He still hadn't fulfilled his promise to TNFA. But he had already started to make plans to go to the Silver City. It wasn't that the young master's heart had any sinister thoughts. It was only that the Beast Kings had asked to help. Moreover, the list of herbs mentioned inside the Book of Folk Remedy wasn't easy to collect. These 6 Beast Kings may manage to collect these herbs. However, I may not have been able to do that for the life of me. The young master had come to TNFA to collect heavenly herbs. And he had collected them in large quantities. However, that amount still wasn't nearly enough for his requirements. However, Long Crane and the others had offered to help Jun Moxie. And they too would get what they wanted in case he succeeded. So, Jun Moxie had decided to tell them his requirements in an honest and blunt manner. This obviously meant that he would save himself from unnecessary labor and effort. He needed many herbs and divine treasures for raw materials, and it would have taken him a long time to collect them on his own. In fact, he reckoned that he may have failed to collect them in 8 lifetimes. I'm using these Beast Kings in this instance. But none of them will suffer a loss if I refine the pills. Everyone will get their share. I believe that those pills are worth far more to them, far more. Therefore, Jun Moxie didn't feel guilty about this. In fact, his conscience was clear. The Beast Kings accepted Jun Moxie's requirements without any issues, and made a vow to complete the list. In fact, they wouldn't mind even if they would have to put a stop to any other matter at hand. They would lend their full strength in order to look for those treasured materials. After all, it related to the Beast King's breakthroughs. So, How could they not be meticulous about it? Not to mention the fact that the rainstorm and hurricane masters had blasphemed Tian Fa's fierce dignity a few days ago. And that matter had been burning in their hearts for a while. Therefore, the Beast Kings had endeavored to advance after that incident had taken place. However, they hadn't been able to find a way forward before. But the Lion and the Monkey Kings had suddenly become amongst the 4 living examples of a potential road to their success. Moreover, that very skilled person had also devised an effective mode of contact via the Jun family of Tianxiang City. The Beast Kings felt even more assured since the goals had been set. In fact, the Beast Kings had only one thought in their minds. Shouldn't I volunteer to deliver those herbs to Tianxiang City if we manage to collect each of those herbs in the first batch alone? I would become the first one to get my reward if that happens. Each of the Beast Kings was thinking the same thing at this moment. And their faces had started to look somewhat strange. They then looked around and saw the faces of their brothers. No one will wish to miss out on this opportunity. It seems that some infighting will be inevitable. Jun Moxie looked to the sky to ascertain the time, and realized that it would be morning soon. So, he stood up to bid his goodbye. The Beast Kings strongly urged him to stay, but he had made his decision. So, he drifted away. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 393. Collision of the Spirit Senses. Jun Moxie felt very happy as he floated in the air. In fact, he almost wanted to sing at the top of his voice. The young master had never thought that everything would go so smoothly. However, he was also unaware that any other individual wouldn't have been successful if they had been in his position, even if they had been in the same circumstances. The Hongjun Pagoda had been the key factor here. The Hongjun Pagoda's aura had made the Xian Beast Kings feel warm to the very bottom of their hearts. And this first impression had been a lasting one. And he had somehow managed to create a mysterious and a fabulous impression as a result. Would anyone else have been able to pull this off? Jun Moxie looked at the surrounding environment in search of a quick way out. And he found himself rather surprised at this. This was because the place where he had run into that little beast wasn't very far from his current location. In fact, it was very close since he could already see that orderly formation of towering tree which created that mansion of sorts. Jun Moxie couldn't help but feel comfortable as he looked at that scenery. And he scuttled forward with a whooshing sound. Hee hee. It will be a lot of fun if I can get my hands on that adorable little thing and take her back with me. Kneading that soft and mushy meat felt so good, especially that little butt. It is something that I would never tire of pinching. I'm really looking forward to it. It had to be said that Jun Moxie's thought process was somewhat nasty. Other people would be very protective towards adorable animals, and would raise them with care, just like the little girl adored Little White. However, his approach was very disdainful. That tiny beast was extremely cute. However, this rare specimen human of the species was also very different from ordinary people. So, he could only think of catching that tiny thing and pinch its posterior again. He genuinely had a nasty taste. The young master entered that little valley with joy and expectations. He had wanted to meet that creature again for a long time. The sight of the beautiful flowers filled his eyes after he set foot in the valley, same as before. And their exquisite fragrance assailed his nostrils once more. But this place was deserted. In fact, not even a little sound could he heard. Jun Moxie took 2 steps. Everything was quiet inside, and he could only hear the echoes of his own footsteps. The place was obviously full of vitality. But this valley was as quiet as a valley of death. This silence was in complete contrast with the bright and colorful scenery. And this contrast left him to feel extremely strange in his heart. The young Master Jun circled around as he meticulously searched. But he didn't find a thing. So he walked to that pleasant-looking stone cave and looked inside. That black cloak was still there. But there was nothing else there. There wasn't a single trace of the adorable little creature. Jun Moxie still didn't wish to leave. So he initiated his spirit sense to search, just in case that little creature had gone out to forage or hunt for food. The young master's spirit sense had become much more powerful ever since he had crossed into the third level of art of unlocking the heavens' fortune. In fact, his ability then and now couldn't even be mentioned in the same breath. He could only sense to a radius of about 30 meters before. But his range had increased to hundreds of meters now. The young master's spirit sense had increased to a large degree. In fact, it had reached a very high level. And this had nothing to do with the Hongjun Pagoda's divine aura, since this power was sourced from Jun Moxie's Sky Xian cultivation level. However, no one would that a Sky Xian ranked expert possessed such a powerful spiritual sense. Jun Moxie continued to expand the reach of his spirit sense in a step-by-step fashion. And he went over his surroundings in an extremely meticulous manner. However, he didn't discover a single trace of that tiny creature. Everything was as silent as before. In fact, this place was dead silent. How can this be? This place was quiet the last time I was here. But it was a peaceful silence at that time. But the silence has some malice about it now. How can I not feel suspicious? This is Tian Fa's core. And it is understandable that common high-level Xian beasts don't dare to venture inside. But do even the top Xian beasts like the peak level 9 ones not dare to come here? The young master had exchanged many words with the 6 beast kings. Therefore, he knew that there were other level 9 peak Xian beasts besides them. It was only that these other beasts couldn't take on the human form. There's deathly stillness here. This shouldn't be happening, right? Jun Moxie strengthened his heart and mobilized his power to its optimum. He then sent out his spirit sense to the depths of the Tian Fa forest like incorporeal arrows. The young master sent his spirit sense to a diameter of over 600 meters. He found the noise of Xian beasts' activity to the north, east and west. However, the southern side was deathly silent. It seems that the source of this weird event is in the south. Jun Moxie retrieved his spiritual sense from the other 3 directions and narrowed his search to the south. He had understood that the strange things happening in the core of Tian Fa had something to do with the weird situation in the south. Then, suddenly, the movement of his spiritual sense towards the south seemed fine at first. But it then hit an exceptionally thick barrier. And the young master's strong spiritual sense got caught. In fact, it was unable to move either forward or backwards. It was like an airborne fly had been caught in a spider's web. Jun Moxie was startled at first. But he recovered quickly. Then, a powerful spirit sense arose and rushed forward to meet Jun Moxie's spirit sense. This spirit sense then collided head-on with Jun Moxie's. Bang! Jun Moxie's spirit sense wasn't weak. However, he felt that it had no margin to resist against the powerful spirit sense which had arisen before him. There was something like an explosion inside his head. He became dizzy and fell down. The 7 orifices of his head had started to overflow with thin wisps of blood. In fact, the young master would have been hurt very seriously if he hadn't reached the powerful and tyrannical state he was currently at. Jun Moxie's spirit sense had already reached a powerful level. So, he hadn't expected that it wouldn't be able to face even a single blow from the opposing spiritual sense he had just encountered. He had never anticipated that he would have been defeated so thoroughly by this force. His opponent had used a sneak attack. But he couldn't deny the formidable strength of their spirit sense. The opponent had a very powerful spirit sense. In fact, he reckoned that they must be stronger than the great masters. This person might not have been more powerful than Venerable Mei, but their power was more or less the same. Could Tian Fa be hiding another strong person? He had been worried about the conflict between the various lands since he felt that Tian Fa would be defeated. Therefore, Jun Moxie had helped the Xian Beast Kings break through the barriers of their advancement and had healed the injured ones. The young master had done this because he liked the Xian Beast's honesty and simplicity. So, he had enhanced their strengths since they would need it to defend themselves. There was no need to aid the Xian Beast Kings if they were to face a power like the city that remained hidden in the snowy peaks. The Beast King's future would perhaps remain unchanged. But the matter regarding the very future of Tian Fa was completely different. Even the usually calm and collected Jun Moxie had turned pale with fear in the face of such a powerful and terrifying spirit sense. His own spirit sense had dispersed even though his opponent's attack hadn't ended. Moreover, the said opponent hadn't let up in their attacks. In fact, it seemed that they had decided to chase after. Jun Moxie's mind moved like electricity. He strove hard to suppress his mental injury, and used the last bit of his consciousness to somehow launch the formidable and endless aura from the Hongjun Pagoda. It was like a broken sword that had chopped forth into the blue sky. And it rushed forth to attack the spirit sense which had clashed head-on with that of the young masters. Jun Moxie's spiritual sense obviously couldn't be compared to that of the Hongjun Pagodas. In fact, they couldn't even be mentioned in the same breath. It started a powerful counterattack, and went after the powerful spirit sense which had confronted the young masters in order to intercept it. The spirit sense from Hongjun Pagoda then unleashed a fiery rain. The opponent's spirit sense was also bright and alert. And it had quickly adjudged that the second wave of spirit sense would be greater than the one before. In fact, this individual seemed to have assessed that the second wave would be much stronger than their own by the time the two sides clashed again. Jun Moxie's damaged spirit sense was finally able to pull away from that thick barrier, and was then able to retreat with the help of Hongjun Pagoda. It was then gently escorted by the aura from the Hongjun Pagoda, and retreated into his body. A miserable and tragic shriek was heard from the south as this happened. This individual's spirit sense was extremely powerful. In fact, it was far more powerful than those of the great masters. Moreover, the reaction time of this individual was amazing. However, their spirit sense was no match for the Hongjun Pagodas. This individual had managed to recall their spirit sense very quickly after the second collision. However, they had been defeated very thoroughly. Thus, it was evident that they must have suffered a heavy damage. The sound of that screech was somewhat low, but it was still very incisive. In fact, it even shook the trees at Jun Moxie's side. After that, a slight rustling sound was heard as this shriek made its way into the distance. Heavens know when Jun Moxie's slamming heart returned to normal, and that feeling of helplessness and powerlessness disappeared. Jun Moxie then wiped the blood from his mouth. He looked towards the south like a wolf on a cold winter night. There is another great power. That place seems like an area even an incorporeal and formless spirit sense can't penetrate. What is that place? And Who is inside it? Jun Moxie jumped up with the entirety of his strength and initiated the yin-yang escape. He took large strides and vanished as he covered the distance between him and his opponent. Going to that weird area will only increase my wisdom and experience. I anyway wish to make a comfortable life for myself inside this forest in the future. So, why would I not wish to learn about such a mysterious and powerful individual? That person could be a huge threat. A strange milky white mist appeared in front of Jun Moxie. It could be said that there hadn't even been the slightest of hints of this mountain-like mist before he had turned around that mountain. In fact, there had been no sign of it in the sky either. However, he was faced with a pure white mist the moment he had crossed the mountain. And this mist had seemingly shrouded everything. It was vast and boundless. This didn't seem like an ordinary form of mist. It didn't have any divine aura inside it either. Moreover, this thing seemed to be made of something which could turn it pitch dark inside. The mist seemed like it would be weak, hollow, and delicate from the outside. However, it was very pliable in reality. This strange white mist couldn't be penetrated by a spirit sense, but a physical body could still enter it. Jun Moxie tried to make his way by moving his hand inside. He stretched it and felt nothing obstructing him. The young master then extended it further inside, and it became evident that there was a huge space beyond this mist barrier. Jun Moxie tried to penetrate the white mist with his spirit sense again. However, he again felt like he had encountered a thick barrier. He couldn't get into it that way. The mist was extremely tough for his spirit sense. It was similar to poking a tenacious balloon with one's finger. The finger might go inside the balloon, but the balloon wouldn't burst. The young master felt this exact same way as he tried to force his spirit sense forward. This is really strange. This is the first time I've seen such a strange place where the body can enter, but the spirit sense can't explore it. It is either another mystery of Tianfa forest, or some sort of an enormous existence. Jun Moxie snorted. It was nearly impossible to change his mind. He would use the yin-yang escape, and he would then enter this place. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 394. The 9 Xian Route. Jun Moxie had no choice but to go in. And this was because the young master noticed a peculiar foliage of vine at the edge of the white mist the moment he thought of withdrawing away. The leaves were heptagonal in shape and blood red in color. Their inner veins were clearly visible. In fact, it was like they were trying to burst out of the leaves' surface. This slender vine was snow white in color. In fact, it looked like silk floss. However, anyone who'd touch it would realize that it was stronger than steel. The 9 Xian Route. This is the 9 Xian Route I haven't been able to find anywhere. Jun Moxie was overjoyed at this unexpected discovery. This was the final ingredient he needed to concoct that Xian advancement Dan. Jun Moxie had accidentally stumbled upon this surprise. So, how could he let go of this herb? It could be dangerous inside. But he would blame himself for an eternity if he didn't take the 9 Xian Route. The pills derived from the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit would also have the same effect. But that pill was still out of Jun Moxie's reach since he lacked a large number of raw materials. Moreover, his present cultivation wasn't high enough to refine it. Anyway, the young master just couldn't wait. Moreover, he could always make use of the pills he had refined from the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons fruit after he had done the same with the Xian advancement pills. And this would result in 2 bursts of advancements. Plus, There was a chance that the pills refined from the 1,000 evils and 10,000 poisons may fail to be as effective as he had imagined. So, wouldn't the gains still outweigh the losses if he was able to procure this vine for the Xian advancement pill? Jun Moxie became extremely elated at seeing something he had thoroughly longed for. And he initiated the yin-yang escape at its full capacity. However, he was disappointed once again. The yin-yang escape had been unstoppable in the past. And it had always been extremely remarkable in every endeavor. But the young master was unexpectedly encountering obstacles while using it in this place. He had the freedom of direction, but he'd feel as if he had fallen into a swamp whenever he'd touch the white mist. And each step he'd take would require a huge amount of energy. Jun Moxie felt trapped. And he started to feel as if he had stepped into a mountain pile of cotton. The cotton looked as light as a feather. But one couldn't see things once they had gone inside that pile of white cotton. The eye could only see one color, but the purity of this color still had a bedazzling effect. Such a fantastic place exists inside the Tian Fa forest. Jun Moxie was completely amazed. He obviously didn't stop the yin-yang escape. Wouldn't he become an easy target for some hidden expert if he did that? A man could die in that murky atmosphere, and wouldn't even come to know about it. Using the yin-yang escape is draining a lot of energy. But it still maintains my invisibility. So, I will be invisible even if an overwhelmingly talented expert is present inside. This is my biggest advantage. This is a remarkable thing. How amazing! Jun Moxie was trapped inside this fantastic environment. So, he reached down towards the 9 Xian roots, and walked along its rattan in the same manner a person walks in their sleep. The young master wasn't worried since he had already conducted his experiments. It wasn't easy to go forward if he wanted it. But it was quite easy to move backwards. Therefore, he could withdraw whenever his heart so desired. Hence, his safety was ensured. Jun Moxie would only venture into such a strange area as long as his safety was 100% ensured. And he wouldn't move forward if things looked even a little dangerous. This was the prudence that had earned him the title of the greatest assassin of his generation. However, Jun Moxie anyway wouldn't have retreated very easily. And this was because he was determined to obtain the 9 Xian root. The 6 beast kings were drinking and celebrating at the time Jun Moxie disappeared into that valley. They had also heard that gloomy screech which had originated from the south. They stared blankly at first. Then, they jumped up. In fact, it seemed as if someone had lit a fire under their buttocks. It came from the direction of that Tian Fa's cave. Long Crane's voice was filled with alarm and panic. He was genuinely very nervous. That genuinely is Tian Fa cave. Big Bear and the others turned pale. They didn't waste any time, and rushed towards it with all their might. Does this have anything to do with the senior? We were drinking, and he was in a hurry to leave. So, we forgot to tell him that he couldn't go there. The Tiger King seemed somewhat worried, and his forehead was covered in sweat. In fact, he had spoken this while he was galloping along the route. It's hard to say. The Falcon King's dark face became even darker. His falcon-sharp eyes could see only pitch darkness far ahead. Who apart from that senior would dare to enter Tian Fa's sacred place? Would you dare to do it? 7th Earl looked very anxious. He then continued in an impatient manner. This sound may have originated because of the senior. And we must beg for leniency and get him released if that is the case. The Monkey King had recently received a favor from the said person. So, How could he bear to see them suffer in his homeland? Big Bear snorted and said, "It's too early to speak anything on that matter. It's very difficult to say which one of those two will have the upper hand here. So, it is very difficult to decide who we will have to beseech in the end. I just hope that the senior still gives weight to my word." These words were enough to determine the absolute and unparalleled faith Big Bear had in that mysterious person. It was hard to assess that whether Big Bear's reputation was prominent enough to speak those words or not. However, it was evident that his skin was thick enough. His skin may not have been the thickest one around, but it was surely unparalleled in many ways. "Shut up, everyone. Is this the time for this? Let's just get there first," Long Crane shouted back. Then, he stopped running on the ground and rose in the air as he transformed into his original form. He then quickly turned into the huge pure white crane. He flapped his huge wings and quickly flew past. Big Bear saw Long Crane leaping into the sky and immediately understood the Crane King's plan. So, he leapt up as well. In fact, he jumped even higher than the Crane King. He would continue soaring into the sky until the Crane King would come around. Then, he'd transform into his bear form and start to descend due to the excessive weight. The Crane King would catch him as he'd start to fall, and he would revert to his human form before he'd land on the Crane King's back. Then, the two of them would proceed forward together. The two Beast Kings had been cooperating with each other for decades. Therefore, they were very familiar with each other. However, there was a miscalculation this time. The Crane King was clearly very impatient at this time. He flipped around in mid-air and came to a stop. Big Bear saw this and transformed to his beast form in order to fall down towards the ground at a very fast speed. However, the impatient Crane King gave a screech and shot forward at an even faster pace. This was a big mistake. Big Bear's immense weight dropped to the ground with a loud bang. He had fallen to the ground very heavily, and the solid layer of earth was smashed. Consequently, an enormous crater was formed at the place he had landed. He had been completely unprepared for the eventuality, and was hence caught off guard. He didn't sustain any wounds to his flesh since it was thick. But there wasn't an inch of his body which didn't hurt badly. The Bear King then sat up and cursed in anger. The other Beast Kings were in haste at this time. In fact, it was almost as if they were firefighters charging to put out a serious arson. They flit from his side in quick succession. The Falcon King was the kindest since he returned to Big Bear's side and handed him his clothing. However, his speed didn't slow down as he did this. After that, he also flew into the sky and shot southwards like a black arrow. The 6 Beast Kings arrived at the forbidden area of the forest in nearly an instant due to their cultivation levels. They found no reason behind the sound they had heard, and only saw that white mist instead. The 6 Beast Kings searched the area around the white mist, but didn't discover any traces that would indicate that a person had entered it. They were obviously very relieved at their finding. However, they were unaware that Jun Moxie had gotten here by using the yin-yang escape, and wouldn't have left any traces as a result. It was a remarkable technique. It had left no traces behind whatsoever. It seems that no one has come here. And it's a great thing that no one has. Long Crane became relieved and spoke. No average person can enter the forbidden area. Everything seems fine. I think it's still good to ask. The scream that came from inside has made me worried. Lion King seemed anxious as he continued. We all know that they wouldn't have made such a sound if they weren't seriously injured. Monkey King disagreed. one can sometimes feel intolerable pain during their practice. And that can happen particularly when one's making a breakthrough. Perhaps that's what that scream was about. Such a sound isn't common inside TNFA, but it's not very rare either. So, should we make such a fuss over nothing? You're right. Every Xian beast screams like that during cultivation practice. But have you ever heard such a sound coming from the forbidden area? The Lion King replied in a sarcastic tone. Long Crane thought for a moment. He then strengthened his voice and asked, "The current Crane King has come to pay his respects. Does the senior of the sacred land have any instructions for us?" His voice was deep and resounding as it made its way inside the white mist. A voice of someone gnashing their teeth replied from inside the mist after a long time had passed. "Sure. You've come to pay your respects. Hurry up and get lost to your grandmother." The 6 beast kings were stunned. Their big eyes had narrowed as they gloomily returned to the road they had come from. The 6 beast kings had been very unlucky this time. The individual inside had been caught off guard by the powerful spirit sense from Jun Moxie's Hongjun Pagoda. So, they had suffered a terrible defeat, and were currently lamenting about how heroic they had been in the past. And this had made them very impatient and annoyed. It was then that the 6 beast kings had decided to come. So, how could they not be snubbed despite their good intentions? The 6 beast kings were given a tight one in their face, but they still didn't dare to complain. In fact, they went back at greater speeds and disappeared from the scene very quickly. Then, that voice again spoke up from behind that thick mist. "Dang it! I forgot to ask them if anyone had come in a while back. Who was that guy? He was such a pain. His spirit sense was so powerful and frightening. I would have been done for good if it weren't for that quick action." Jun Moxie was using the yin-yang escape with everything he had. He was having difficulty while moving inside the thick mist, but he couldn't help laughing after what he had heard. It seems that the guy inside this place is having a tough time. I seem to have driven his mind out of sorts. Just how powerful is the Hongjun Pagoda's spirit sense? I was able to contend against this individual's strength. In fact, the Hongjun Pagoda left this individual in an injured state. This is truly amazing. He followed the 9 Xian roots vine one step at a time. And each step of his was extremely cautious. Jun Moxie couldn't believe that the person inside this thick mist could live in this environment. He should have been dead by now. Moreover, I haven't come across a single tree or any other plant since I've started to follow that vine. This is extremely abnormal. The 9 Xian root is here. So, how come there isn't any vegetation around? This doesn't make any sense. It was unknown how much distance Jun Moxie had covered before he finally felt that the thick mist had begun to thin out. So, he mustered his strength and proceeded forward. Jun Moxie suddenly felt his body relax as he finally left that thick white mist. And he found himself inside a clearing. The area was still surrounded by a wall of that snow-white mist. Therefore, one couldn't see anything past it. The young master could only see up to a few meters in diameter, but nothing beyond. Everything beyond it was merely endless and thick white mist. There was a cluster of trees not far from him. And then, there was a hill a bit further ahead. But it was enveloped in mist as well. One could clearly see a little bit of that mist in between the vegetation as well. The mist was light where the trees were thick, and it was dense where the trees were sparse. Jun Moxie suddenly realized something. He still hadn't figured what this white mist was, but he had certainly understood one thing. This strange mist is sparse wherever there is a lush growth of trees, but it is dense in the area where the vegetation is scarce. The young master saw the endless white mist and sighed. It seems there isn't a lot of vegetation here. It's no wonder that something as poisonous as this 9-xian root grows alone in this place. The 9-xian roots were spread far and wide, just like the diameter of the trees. The young master discovered that the trees inside the cover of this mist weren't very tall. In fact, they mustn't have been more than 10 meters in height. However, they were very thick. It was obvious that the fog had stunted the trees' growth in terms of height. So, they had grown horizontally instead. However, Jun Moxie was still very puzzled by this since there was no sunlight in this area. So, he couldn't understand how these had managed to trees grow. Moreover, they seemed to have been growing for thousands of years. Jun Moxie sighed. He decided that he wouldn't think about these mysteries any longer. The Tianfa forest was full of mysteries, and he didn't have the strength to solve them all at this point. It is difficult for me to make progress with the yin-yang escape method, and my skills aren't helping either. But I will unravel these mysteries one day. And that is when this Tianfa will thoroughly accept me. Anyway, I don't have the time to think over these restricted matters right now. I only need to dig out this 9-xian root, and I'm done after that. He was about to start when he heard a soft sound. It was coming from the forest, and it sounded like the snort of an animal. Jun Moxie attentively looked in that direction. A huge golden-furred bear slowly stood up from the mist that had shrouded his body. It then stretched its huge body. It was a level 9 peak xian beast. Jun Moxie didn't wish to complicate things. So, he decided to evade into the soil. He went underground and dug out the 9-xian root. He could smell the 9-xian root's fragrance more easily inside the soil. He held the 9-xian root in his hand to take a better look, and his face exposed an exulted expression. The snow-white 9-xian root sparkled like jade in Jun Moxie's hand. The 9-xian root had a very strict aging system. It would be black after it would sprout. And it would remain black until the first 10 years had passed. It would turn brown after that. The color would change to yellow once 100 years had passed, red after 1,000, and it would only become milky white after 10,000 years. This place has the best quality 9-xian root. Jun Moxie hadn't expected to find such a huge surprise. The quantity of this xian root wasn't small either. It could be used for Grandpa Jun's pills, and there would still be a lot of it left afterwards. In fact, enough of it would be left to supplement the refining of every kind of divine xian pill. The young master happily took the root and put it inside the Hongjun pagoda. He then broke into laughter without realizing it. Suddenly, the entire area started to reverberate with loud screeches. It turned out that there were more than one level 9-xian beasts in that area. Jun Moxie used his spirit sense to search forward, and found the sources to be as strong as the spirit sense he had previously clashed with. In fact, there were several such entities in this area. Jun Moxie couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. My God! How come there are so many powerful entities hidden here? He couldn't dare to delay, and he whizzed away from there. It was difficult to come in, but it was quite easy to go back. It only took him a moment to get away from the scope of that white mist. The young master smiled as he looked at that white mist from afar, and muttered, "I will be back. That's for sure." Jun Moxie then came upon a huge rock which had big inscriptions written on it. It was then that he realized where he had been to. Tianfa's cave. This place turned out to be the most mysterious place in the entire world. Tian Fa's cave. This is great. It is genuinely worthy of its legendary and mysterious status. Jun Moxie couldn't help but smile inside his heart. He then flew up like a breeze as dawn broke out in the silky blue sky. After that, he quickly made his way back to the southern heaven city. This is truly a great harvest. And an unexpected great harvest at that. This great harvest had left Jun Moxie to feel extremely happy. He now had every material required to make his grandfather advance. Moreover, he would also be left with enough material to refine a lot of divine pills. Was there any medicine that couldn't be refined from this herb that had accumulated tens of thousands years worth aura in the Tianfa? There were barely any other places apart from Tianfa which had a special environment that was capable of growing such heavenly herbs. How much effort has this saved on my end? Moreover, my relationship with the Beast Kings has improved a lot after today. In fact, we've become quite familiar with each other. And this will come out to be very helpful there as well. Jun Moxie still looked like the debauchee from 6 months ago. However, the fact was exactly opposite. He had been amazing in secret. The Jun family's military strength couldn't be considered weak. They had many people under their dominion. Moreover, Hai Chenfeng and Song Shang were there to take care of the Jun household in the Tianxiang city. And the underworld gangs of the city were working for them as well. So, it was like they had full layout of the capital with them. Moreover, the business was blooming under Tang Yuan's talent and bitter haggling. The aristocratic hall was like a legendary treasure tree in the capital. Moreover, it was a treasure tree which would shed huge amounts of treasure when shaken once. In terms of individual cultivation, Jun Zhantian was at the peak of Sky Xian, Jun Wuyi was at Sky Xian middle rank, and Jun Moxie was at the base rank of Sky Xian. And each one of them was on the verge of another breakthrough, especially Jun Zhantian and Jun Wuyi. They would soon become Spirit Xian experts as per Jun Moxie's plan. They also had external help since one of the Great Eight Masters' solitary falcon was living at the Jun family's residence. Moreover, Jun Moxie was on the verge of completing the prerequisites that would free the Dongfang family from the burden of their oath. And this would gain him an extremely startling force in the form of these assassins. Each of his 3 Dongfang uncles was a Spirit Xian expert. So, wouldn't the Dongfang family be more powerful when their complete strength was taken into account? Furthermore, he had painstakingly performed great favors for 6 beast kings in the Tianfa forest. It could even be said that the level 9 Xian beasts and the beast kings would rush to assist in any battle as long as he asked them in the form of that mysterious master. This genuinely wasn't an impossible notion to consider. And there was literally nothing that these Xian beasts couldn't achieve. Moreover, Jun Moxie had invented himself into that mysterious master, and this was one of his greatest advantages. Who in the entire world didn't know that such a divine and powerful person was supporting the Jun family? This incorporeal and mysterious force was the Jun family's greatest support. Who in the world would contend against the Jun family after such an individual had decided to support them? Had they not seen the second great master turn into ash? In addition, the Bailey family's young genius Bailey Luo Yun was waiting for him in the southern heaven city. Inviting him had also been part of Jun Moxie's big plan. It could be said that Jun Moxie had become a great power in this world. He had become extremely awesome. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 395. How did you eat it? In the southern heaven city. The very exhausted Guan Qinghan had closed her eyes and lain down on her bed after Jun Moxie had left her tent. Her spirit had been stretched extremely thin ever since she had been beside the young master. Her heart wasn't worried. And the others didn't matter. However, Guan Qinghan's mind was fuzzy, and she was extremely exhausted. Pain was invading her body. In fact, there wasn't a point on her body where it didn't hurt. Moreover, she felt ashamed that the lower part of the body hurt a lot in particular. In fact, she felt as if it was being torn apart. Even the tiniest of movements would give rise to excruciating pain there. It's entirely that idiot's fault for meddling with things. Dang, it hurts so much. Guan Qinghan felt powerless and weak. She couldn't move a single part of her body, not even her little toe. 2 tears flowed down her cheeks. She didn't regret helping the young master. Nor did she resent Jun Moxie. But it was too painful. And these tears were her only means of relief from this pain. The young lady had been passive throughout that stormy event. In fact, she had even mentally prepared herself for it. But she had still lost every ounce of her physical strength. In fact, every bit of her Xian's strength had forsaken her as well. She felt that she didn't have any bones or muscles in her body. She wasn't able to summon any strength from any part of her body. But she was still unexpectedly able to turn her eyes. Guan Qinghan felt somewhat surprised at this. And those tears had left her eyes even before she could react. She expended the last bit of her strength to save her pride and dignity when she had stood up inside Jun Moxie's tent and had put on her clothes. The young lady didn't wish to show her weak side in Jun Moxie's presence. She had told herself that she had committed that mistake to save Jun Moxie, to save the last surviving member of the Jun family's 3rd generation. She had thought that there would be no traces of that event, and that she wouldn't get involved with him after that. In fact, she had convinced herself that there wouldn't be a need for them to get involved with each other after the incident had passed. She tried to think along these lines, but she couldn't convince herself. "You're my woman. This is a fact." Jun Moxie had spoken those words in a domineering manner. And his tone had been unquestionable in its authority. That scene had been repeating in her mind, and those words had been playing in her ears. "I will marry you when these problems subside," that man had said. Was that a promise? Was that his desire? That was a mistake, right? Isn't it? And why am I so scared? But why is there a trace of bashfulness in my heart? I did it to save the sole surviving member of the Jun family's 3rd generation. But why haven't I committed suicide already? Why haven't I traded my life to defend the names of these 2 families? Why hasn't this idea even crossed my mind? Why? Am I a woman with no sense of shame and honor? Why? She was quietly lying in bed when this train of thought overwhelmed her and flooded her mind with a plethora of questions. And Guan Qinghan had forgotten about the pain her body was suffering as a result. Her face became red at first. It would then turn deathly pale, before turning deep red again, and would eventually paint her neck the same color. And this continued to happen in endless circles. 2 teardrops flowed down her cheeks and soaked her long, black, and satin-like hair. However, they weren't because of the pain this time. This night, I am doomed to get no sleep. She was unaware of how much time had passed when she heard someone speak something outside her tent. She didn't care much about that at this time. Everything seemed very trivial to her in her current frame of mind. But There's always something that comes to provoke a person regardless of how hard they try to avoid it. Someone lifted the entry flap of the tent and stuck their small head inside. This person then sneakily looked around the place and walked in on tiptoes. Elder Sister Guan, are you all right? Dugu Xiaoyi's face was brimming with a sense of loss and shame. Her eyes gleamed with tears as she looked at Guan Qinghan. She then cautiously and solemnly sat at the bedside. It seemed as if the little girl's figure had wasted away in the middle of the night. The little girl had been born into the second most powerful family of the capital city of the Tianxiang Empire. And she was the only girl in her generation in that huge family. The rest of the offsprings were boys. Therefore, Dugu Xiaoyi had blossomed in that family while being doted on. In fact, the care she had received was hard to imagine. It was very hard to have male-female relationships in that era. And this case was the same for even the most common of girls of the most common of households. The morality of such a relation was scrutinized very strictly before marriage. And it was for the fear of someone learning about something unsavory. And wasn't she from a big family like the Dugu family? Even the people of the neighborly households had to be very vigilant. They may dare to talk about those tabooed things, but the young lady's ears shouldn't come to hear of them. Otherwise, it would be a huge and unforgivable crime. Their family had the grandfather in charge, 3 great generals, and the 7 beastly young masters, and many other powerful members. Which one of them couldn't decide the life or death of a person from an everyday household? Therefore, the consequences of even one indecent word reaching the ears of the young Miss Dugu would be horrible. Moreover, the little girl was only 16 years of age at present. What could she understand? This was an era when the youthful maidens would only come to understand such things a night before their marriage. The mother and daughter would be alone together, and both would be blushing. The mother would gingerly hand over erotic pictures through the silk. And the daughter would be very careful while stowing it away. However, the thin silk enveloping these pictures would clearly indicate its purpose. After that, the mother would send a loyal and elderly lady with her daughter upon her marriage, as a guide. And this is when the real education would begin. Instructions about what to do, and when, and so on, the newly married girls would follow that loyal elderly lady's teachings. Ahm. Even the mother would be too shy to speak about such things to her daughter. Therefore, the fact that Dugu Xiaoyi already understood this much, and now knew what something as vague as cooking rice meant, was an amazing feat in its own merit. However, Dugu Xiaoyi didn't understand this aspect of the society since she was very adorable and pure. A young lady would quickly assume the indicated postures the moment a man would ask her switch to the pushing a cart position, if she knew about these things in detail. How terrifying would such a tabooed sight be for this era? Which family would ever dare to take such a daughter-in-law in that era? And they would be very unhappy even if they braced themselves and went ahead with such a marriage proposal. Guan Qinghan's expression became complicated when she saw her culprit in front of her. How could she not harbor some hate when she saw the person guilty of perpetrating such a big crime? The little girl would have had to lose her virtue, and would have had bear this pain if they hadn't switched places by accident. She had thought herself clever, and had set out to cook rice. She had then set a roaring fire, but she herself had been scared away from the cooked food. And then, I took advantage of the situation. Wait. I didn't take any advantage of the situation. I was obviously the innocent one in this case. Could it be considered as taking advantage? It hurts a lot. This is a huge sin. Guan Qinghan's face started to heat up at that thought. It was like her face had caught fire. However, She didn't know whether it was because of anger or shame. Elder Sister Guan. I'm really sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know that it would turn out this. Dugu Xiao scowled miserably. She felt distressed that she had lost such a rare once-in-a-lifetime opportunity due to her mistake. The little girl had obviously cooked great rice. But someone else had consumed that cooked rice. In fact, she hadn't even come over to apologize. Instead, the little girl felt wronged. It's nothing, it's in the past now. Guan Qinghan smiled with difficulty. She wanted to raise her hand, but she was unable to since it was extremely painful. In fact, even budging a little hurt her a lot. Elder Sister Guan, it isn't that painful. Dugu Xiao saw Guan Qinghan remain motionless. So, she asked inquisitively. Ah. Ahm. Ahm. Guan Qinghan's red face looked at her in an accusing manner. How could she reply to that? How can I possibly answer to that in a way that doesn't sound wrong? Elder Sister Qinghan. You're not answering, but I know that you're in a lot of pain, you've suffered a lot. Elder Sister. Dugu Xiao spoke up with some sympathy. Did he hit you? Did he hit me? Guan Qinghan opened her big and beautiful eyes at those words. Where did that come from? Jun Moxie had lost his mind due to that excessive poison. He hadn't gone berserk on a battlefield. So, why would he hit me? Oh, I had also seen Brother Moxie's devilish form that day. He was sure to have hit you. It's my fault. Dugu Xiao had spoken those words absent-mindedly. It was evident that she hadn't dared to speak the words she was thinking in reality. He. Guan Qinghan had finally understood that this little girl didn't understand what she herself had believed a moment ago. She definitely has a lot of guts. How else could she have dared to ask that question? Can I ask you a question, Elder Sister Qinghan? Dugu Xiao became relaxed when she saw Guan Qinghan chuckle. In fact, she had become so relaxed that she had become unbridled by what had happened before. What's the question? You can ask. Guan Qinghan looked at her gently. She could do nothing about this little girl at this time. Ahm, that one, how did you eat it? Was it tasty? Dugu Xiao rubbed her clothes as her face turned red with embarrassed. What? Eat what? I haven't had anything to eat. Guan Qinghan was flabbergasted. How could anyone not be puzzled by what that little girl was speaking? Brother Moxie, wasn't he cooked by the rice I gave? Dugu Xiaoyi's face became extremely red. She gathered a lot of courage as she asked. I cooked the rice. But you ate it in the end. So, how did you eat it? Ha! Guan Qinghan's beautiful eyes widened to their greatest limit. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 396. The True Style of the Evil Monarch. That kind of thing. Dugu Xiao was feeling very embarrassed. She couldn't deal with the embarrassment when she saw that Guan Qinghan couldn't understand her. So, the little girl whispered, Good sister, tell me how you did it. Guan Qinghan became petrified when she heard this. And her eyes shone with a black sheen as she looked on. How to do that? How can I say about it? And how can this little girl ask about such a thing? You, Xiao Yi, what nonsense are you talking? You're a girl from a big family. Aren't you ashamed of asking such a question? I am tired. You have your food. and go take some rest. Guan Qinghan's face reddened to her ears as she reprimanded with embarrassment. Elder Sister Guan, you told me that we are all women here when we were at home. So, we shouldn't act like strangers when discussing these matters. Dugu Xiao smiled as she gathered her opportunity. She had come to her tent to get a feel of the situation. And she had now come to realize that Guan Qinghan wasn't angry at her. So, she immediately became audacious and lifted the quilt to peek inside. You, don't do that. Guan Qinghan was startled by this, and she wound the quilt tighter around herself. I'll see what this relationship is this. Dugu Xiao smacked her lips and continued with hidden bitterness. Why is everyone so secretive regarding this matter? I still don't know what this thing is about. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten so flustered today. And elder sister wouldn't have been able to take advantage of the situation. Taking advantages? I took advantage of the situation. This simply isn't done. The little girl exerted her strength as she spoke and forced the quilt up. Guan Qinghan was completely powerless at this time. And Dugu Xiaoyi's curiosity was extremely strong. Consequently, the little girl was successful in removing the quilt and got into the bed. Guan Qinghan's body was once again inflicted with pain as a result of this struggle, and she couldn't help but groan as she wrinkled her shapely eyebrows in extreme anguish. Let me see where the pain is. I will help elder sister with it. Dugu Xiao was acting like a mean woman. Guan Qinghan cursed in a lowered voice as she struggled in the blanket. Then, she started to plead, and she was soon left to pant, and she eventually ceased her struggle. Oh! How can there be a swelling over there? How can that happen over there? Isn't this extremely scary? Dugu Xiao cried in alarm whilst they remained wrapped in the quilt. She had been struck by an inconceivable shock. How's that even possible? One could imagine from this voice that the little girl's eyes and mouth were opened wide in astonishment. Guan Qinghan wanted to die from the shame. Stop, stop, you, stop this. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Dugu Xiaoyi's beautiful hair was disheveled. She joyfully got more comfortable in the quilt and put her head on Guan Qinghan's pillow. She then assumed the appearance of a person who had extended their ear to listen carefully and diligently. Tell me everything in detail, elder sister. Everything remained silent throughout the night. The sky was glimmering with sunlight early the next morning. There was a burst of fluctuation in the atmospheric winds as young Master Jun appeared inside his tent after a night of hard work. He hadn't slept throughout the night. Yet, his spirits were still high. They were to break camp on this day. But there was still one matter which Jun Moxie hadn't dealt with. He washed his face and tidied up his appearance. Then, he moved out of his tent. However, he attracted attention from near and far the moment he stepped out. The young master was like a magnet at that moment. And all the eyes around couldn't help but be attracted towards him. Jun Moxie was dressed in rarely worn white robes. His face looked like it was crowned with jade. His sword-like eyebrows were raised, and his eyes seemed gentle and spiritual. He genuinely looked like a handsome young master, an elegant and handsome youngster. His expression was consciously or otherwise ice-cold, devilish, fierce, and grim. Jun Moxie's mouth was softly closed. But it was curved upwards at the ends. Yet, the onlookers couldn't help but feel alarm and abject fear. Everyone could sense that there was a world-shaking murderous aura behind that slightly closed and smiling mouth. He was smiling as warmly as the spring breeze. But the vibes that were coming from him made people feel that it was more like a cold gale from a desolate forest. It was like he had grasped the absolute power and authority to kill. It seemed as if everyone was beneath him. In fact, the young master seemed to be high in the clouds, and overlooking all creation. The killing intention in his aura was like a strong tide, but it was also like a light breeze at the same time. His jet-black hair was tied up with a blue-green band. Most of it was floating above his shoulders in a graceful manner from the back of his head. And it left the onlookers to believe that it was some kind of a free and graceful dust, as if it would float away whenever the wind would blow. The young master also seemed like an individual who was standing solitary on a lofty summit, cold and lonesome. There was a green-blue belt around his waist. However, the belt somehow seemed like arms that were wrapped around his waist. His robe and sleeves floated upon his tall stature. And it seemed like he wasn't a regular human being of that world. A sword hung lightly on the waist of his broad robe. However, that gleam in his eyes seemed sharper than the sword. He looked like a beautiful and heavenly creature. He looked like someone who would float above the earth at any time. However, any man would still feel that the said youngster was a blood-crazed demon that had been unleashed from the gates of the underworld. Obey me, or die by my hand. I will wreak havoc upon the world. I will kill the kings of men. And I will also kill their gods. This visual was very confusing and contradictory. And it undoubtedly gave rise to a very strange feeling. How can such contradictory personalities reside in the same man? This is impossible. Moreover, that unique personality had somehow appeared inside the young Master Jun. It was something like the sight of water and fire on a burning stove. It seemed as if yin and yang were intertwining inside one person in a seamless fashion. This had happened for the first time since Jun Moxie had appeared in that world. And it was the first time that the evil monarch's demeanor and style of movement had reflected in Jun Moxie. This was the first time that the so-called bloodthirsty and terrifying murderous aura of the evil monarch was being released into that world in a free and unrestrained manner. I will no longer endure in silence. I will no longer pretend. I'm the evil monarch from this day forth. The otherworldly evil monarch. Jun Moxie took a step as he slowly walked into the distance, and towards a tent. The 3 surviving members of the Bailey family were residing inside that tent. The young Master Jun's next target was Bailey Luoyun. The Bailey family hadn't sent many men to this battle. In fact, they had only sent 5 people. They were being led by the spirit Xian Bailey Xiongfeng. The rest were Sky Xian experts, except for Bailey Luoyun since he was at the Jade Xian realm. However, the barely Jade Xian peak Bailey Luoyun had surprisingly survived the battle with the Xian beasts unscathed, while 2 of the Sky Xian experts of the Bailey family had lost their lives. Bailey Xiongfeng had been left confused and depressed by this. The Bailey family had picked their experts after careful consideration. They were well aware that those 2 Sky Xian peak experts could lose their lives in this battle when they had sent them to TNFA. However, the Bailey family had picked them since their deaths wouldn't have brought about any instability in their family structure. However, this didn't mean that they wanted those 2 Sky Xian peak experts to die. In fact, their deaths were a price they almost couldn't afford to pay. The Bailey family was strong. But it wasn't an extremely strong family. How many Sky Xian peak experts could they have in their ranks? The agreement Jun Moxie and Bailey Luoyun had made before the battle still hadn't been fulfilled. But everything had come to an end now. The Jun family had become a force no one would dare to provoke. So, it was time to dispel any misgivings Bailey Luoyun may still possess. Therefore, Jun Moxie had chosen this moment to fight. Bailey Luo Yun is a one-in-a-million genius. His family may not like him. But the attitude which entails that I'm the best in the world is still ingrained in his bones. It was common sense that one would have to break the pride of someone as talented as Bailey Luo Yun before they could take him in as an underling. Otherwise, the said underling wouldn't listen to orders properly, and won't be made of use easily. The evil monarch's murderous aura and arrogance had been spreading out for a long time. Every man could feel it in their very bones. And this was something Bailey Luo Yun simply didn't possess. Bailey Luo Yun had a stubborn pride that was rooted into his bones. In fact, it was rooted quite deep. And it would rebound even under such pressure. However, the evil monarch's pride was that of an entity who stood alone at the top of the world. These two parties couldn't be compared on any accord. Jun Moxie's strength wasn't the greatest in that world at this time. But the Hong Jun Pagoda gave him the confidence which made him feel like he was genuinely standing at the summit of the world. If there was ever a god in that world, he would be looking down on the entirety of creation. And Jun Moxie believed himself to be such an individual. Who will it be if not me? The reason Jun Moxie had warmed up to Bailey Luo Yun was very simple. It was because he had found a special temperament in Bailey Luo Yun. Moreover, this was a temperament which regarded life or death as nothing. One could even say that Bailey Luo Yun would remain calm and tranquil even if the world were to collapse right in front of his eyes. It wouldn't be surprising to find such a temperament in people of old age, or those who had suffered hardships for long years. But Bailey Luo Yun was barely 20 years old. And this was noteworthy. To suffer at the hands of his own family was one thing. But his personality was something else. Such a person possessed the certain disposition of a killer. And an extremely adept killer at that. In fact, he was someone who could even rival an assassin such as Jun Moxie. The so-called assassins who were previously dispatched by the Blood Sword Hall were nothing in Jun Moxie's eyes. And that was because they were merely a group of fighting men. They weren't true assassins. In fact, the young Master Jun had only found two men who had the temperament of a true assassin ever since he had come to this world. The assassin he had met at the palace's doors during the scholars' feast was someone whose lightning-like attacks still left some post-traumatic fear inside Jun Moxie's heart. His attacks were nearly unstoppable, and could strike their target without fail. In fact, one couldn't even spot the place where they had come from. Such should be the style of a true assassin. It was a pity that the said assassin was an enemy. And the other one was Bailey Luo Yun. The Jun family had a military background, personal strength, intelligence from the gangs, and external aid of individuals whose strengths were nearly at the top of the world. The only thing they lacked was people from Jun Moxie's previous line of work. A group of assassins. Heavens know how much effort one can save if they have a group of assassins at their beck and call. Assassins have always been the kings of darkness. They have always been the ultimate solution to settle any dispute. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 397. Instigating a situation of chaos and fanaticism. Jun Moxie's way of thinking was very simple. He didn't wish to run into a situation of inconvenience where the opposite party would start a useless argument whenever he'd begin to take action. You're going to listen to me, are you? Great. Send someone to fight me. We'll talk after that's done with. You have the time to waste over arguments? But my time is very precious. Hai Chen Feng and Song Shang's strength was much higher than Bailey Luo Yun's. But Hai Chen Feng was someone with a very righteous a character. In fact, he was a chivalric warrior of sorts. So, he couldn't be assigned many kinds of tasks. And Song Shang was crazy about wine. This made him even more unsuitable in that regard. Therefore, neither of them was suitable for that core position. That's why Jun Moxie valued Bailey Luoyun for highly. Jun Moxie's silhouette walked past the Supreme Commander's tent. Jun Wu-yi, Solitary Falcon, the three Dongfang brothers, Duanmu Chao Fan, and Sikong and Yi were discussing urgent matters inside. They were left startled when they felt a chill that had surpassed any in the world. They also felt a thick and cold aura along with it. It seemed like an exceptionally murderous sword had flashed past the tent. This was only momentary, but it was sufficient to terrify the men inside. In fact, their very souls had been made to tremble. Why has such an exceedingly powerful person arrived inside the encampment? The 7 men turned their heads around in unison. And this happened in time for them to see Jun Moxie's white clothes flutter in the wind through the tent's entrance. They merely caught a glimpse of that lithe figure. But the 7 men were left stunned. Jun Moxie. That was Jun Moxie. How is this possible? Which one of these 7 men wasn't a top expert? They possessed keen eyesight and a sharp brain. How could any ordinary person compare to them? An average person would be extremely astonished to witness such an event. But those 7 men had perceived the very essence of it. This is an awe-inspiring feeling. How many people would one have had to kill to give off such a strong and cruel aura? How many things would one have had to experience to attain a position of such greatness? Would one's soul ever be at peace if they had experienced so many deaths? Jun Wu-yi had once been in a position of great power as the blood general, and he had commanded millions of soldiers at that time. He had rallied his soldiers, and massive areas had been filled with corpses owing to the terrible bloodbaths that had followed. However, he introspected and realized that even he himself had never been able to attain the demeanor Jun Moxie had. Jun Wu-yi was undoubtedly an emotional individual. And this emotional attitude of his had ensured that he'd never reached Jun Moxie's levels. The solitary falcon had traveled the world, and had treated human life as grass whilst he had roamed cruel and free. His Xian cultivation had reached the top, and he had become a great master. But even he didn't possess an unapproachably high aura like that of Jun Moxie's. The 3 Dongfang brothers were born assassins. A handful of bloody murders were nothing to them. But their murderous aura was lacking by far when compared to the extremely frightening and spear-tip, sharp aura that was being released by Jun Moxie. And there was obviously no need to mention Duanmu Chao Fan and Sikong and Yi. They were nothing in comparison. In fact, no one was anything in comparison. Who could have thought that the man who had been the source of everyone's laughter last night would give such a huge shock to everyone today? That impact was extremely strong. In fact, it was earth-shaking. Jun Wu-yi, you, damn it. I didn't make a mistake, right? Dongfang Wenjian spoke up in an incoherent manner. Wasn't that your brother's son? My sister's son. Wen Xian's son? Moxie. That little bastard. Everyone shifted their unwavering gazes to Jun Wu-yi as those words were spoken. Just how many things is your Jun family hiding? Such a youngster was shown to be a debauchee for 10 years, how did you do it? Jun Wu-yi's eyeballs had also shot out of their sockets. It seemed like he was dreaming as he replied in a near-delirious state. How would I know? That was Moxie, right? It must be him. Dongfang Wendao was very angry. What must be? He has grown up with you since his birth. Who else would know if you don't? Give me a god-danged definite answer. That's right. Who knows if you don't? Everyone looked at Jun Wuyi. Their expressions were strange. You still think you can hide things? Jun Wuyi was silent. In fact, he was speechless. I don't know what's going on. I really don't know. Jun Moxie was unaware that he had given such a huge shock to everyone who was besides his uncle. So, he was obviously oblivious to the fact that he had created such a big problem for his uncle merely by walking past his tent. He had only released the entirety of that desolate murderous aura which had gathered inside his heart. However, this was feeling which had long been dormant inside him. So, this evil aura was becoming even stronger with each step he was taking. And the thirst for blood gathered in his soul was also being emitted out more loftily with every step he took. He had calculated the distance between his tent and that of the Bailey families. He had done this when he had taken the first step. And the tyrant Jun's intention was to leave the Bailey family's members to tremble by the time he had made his way to the front of their tent. He wasn't doing this to merely convince Bailey Luoyun. He was doing it to accomplish Bailey Luoyun's cherished dream. Jun Moxie had realized it even if Bailey Luoyun hadn't told him. There was a plain-looking tent ahead. Guan Qinghan and Dugu Zhao were inside it. They had freshened up and had gotten ready for a new day after the previous night's cacophony. Guan Qinghan had only had a short period of rest. But she had already recovered to a great extent. She had received some medical assistance from Jun Moxie's aura and had rested properly throughout the night. And this had been of great help to her. The young lady at least had the energy to walk around. Dugu Xiao had been sighing and moaning. It seemed that Guan Qinghan's mind was in a better condition in comparison. The little girl had a lot on her mind. She had been looking at her chest and posterior from time to time. However, the more she's do this, the more inferior she'd feel. Why are they like this? Why is elder sister so big there? Dugu Xiao had somewhat lost her self-confidence. She hung her head and spoke. Your figure is very nice. Elder sister Qinghan. You're so big there. How do you do it? Guan Qinghan's beautiful face reddened as she replied angrily. What are you saying? You're still young. Give it 2 years. And yours will be big as well. Perhaps even bigger than mine. Dugu Xiao clasped her cheek. The little girl's mind had started to wander afar. So, she had heard nothing of what had been said. She instead continued to murmur on her own. So big. And so soft. Brother Moxie must have found it nice after having felt it. It felt so nice to me last night as well. Can mine also be that big in the future? Can they? Guan Qinghan was extremely embarrassed and anxious. So, she quickly covered the little girl's mouth and said, Foolish girl. What nonsense are you saying? Tears had started to flow from Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes by now. However, Guan Qinghan's hand had covered her mouth. So, her tears dripped onto Guan Qinghan's hand. She looked quite pitiful. And Guan Qinghan became frightened since she thought that her act of covering the other girl's mouth must have been painful for her. So, she quickly relinquished her grip. Dugu Xiao became increasingly teary-eyed. Her tears made their way down like a stream. Her mouth began to quiver as her eyes stared helplessly in grief. It was evident that she was feeling very sad. Xiao, what's happening with you? Quick, tell your elder sister. Guan Qinghan was in a flurry as she wiped away the little girl's tears and asked. I know that elder sister is trying to comfort me. I should be big in these areas. But I'm not as big as you. Moreover, it's not even soft, boo-hoo. Dugu Xiao Yi had started to bawl with grief. Also, I let that good opportunity slip by last night. I'm an idiot. I'm a big idiot. I'm annoyingly stupid. Dugu Xiao Yi ran out of breath since she was crying. She then started to sniffle. Guan Qinghan was struck dumb by this. Dugu Xiao Yi then saw a silhouette outside the tent. And the sound of weeping came to an abrupt stop. It seemed that she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She strenuously rubbed her eyes and spoke up in a low and surprised voice. Brother Mo Xie? Dugu Xiao Yi's voice had reeked of an expression of outrageous shock when she had said the words, Brother Mo Xie. In fact, it was like she had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Guan Qinghan hadn't turned around at first. But she couldn't help turn her head once she heard the little girl speak. They saw a white-clothed figure not far from their tent, and it was slowly coming over like the rising sun. He was walking over slowly and swiftly, like the rustling leaves in the wind. But they couldn't help as they held their breaths at his approach. In fact, Dugu Xiao Yi thought that she had just seen the emperor. That's right. This is what she had been left to feel. It felt as if one was facing someone who held an enormous amount of power in their hand. It was as if this person could look down on the entirety of humanity like it was weed. It was someone who was detached from the entire world. This individual carried an extremely elegant bearing which could rule over the world. His light footsteps made sounds which echoed in a manner that seemingly made them drum across the world. It felt like the people of the world would be left to feel joy and fear at every step he took. And that they would be ready to kneel in front of him out of panic and respect. This is the brother Mo Xie I keep thinking about. Or is it that indecent Jun Xie? My brother Mo Xie? Dugu Xiao Yi's mind had gone blank. She felt like she was in a dream. In fact, her eyes were emitting a flash of fanaticism. She seemed somewhat bewitched. This Jun Xie was a perfect match with the image of an ideal man this girl had been fantasizing about since her childhood. My husband is a peerless hero. The great heroes of the world will be trampled under his foot. He is a king who looks down on everyone. But he will be very intimate and caring towards me. He won't tease me when I'm unhappy. And will hold me when I grieve. He will also laugh with me when I'm happy. This is my ideal husband. Guan Qinghan was also astonished. This Jun Xie had made her forget all the debauchery which he had committed in the past. He had also wiped clean the bad impression he had made on her mind. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't bring herself to. His elegance and power had attracted her gaze to him, and she simply couldn't look away from him. Jun Xie's cold gaze shifted just in time to meet the dazed eyes of Guan Qinghan's. And Guan Qinghan was left to tremble as a result. This was the first time that she was looking at Jun Xie since that night. And a thought suddenly emerged in her heart. Has he genuinely changed? This is a domineering and reverent man with an astonishingly imposing bearing. He possesses an extremely murderous aura. This demonic man is the one who took my virtue. Is he really that same debauchee? How could there have been such a huge change? The two people looked at each other in silence. Jun Xie gave a meaningful expression. However, he didn't come to a stop. And his expression again became cold and sharp as he moved towards the Bailey family's tent. His imposing aura had reached extremely great heights by now. And Guan Qinghan was left completely perplexed in the background. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 398. Jun vents anger. Jun Moxie needn't have drawn close to the people from Bailey family since they could already feel his sharp aura. After all, Bailey Xiongfeng was at the basic level of the spirit Xian realm. So, his Xian Qi cultivation was only marginally inferior to the three Dongfang brothers. Moreover, the two other men of the Bailey family were at Sky Xian Peak, while Bailey Luo Yun was at Jade Xian Peak. So, wouldn't they have been able to sense that all-enshrouding, murderous aura? In fact, it was obvious to them that this imposing aura was moving towards their tent. So, they were the intended targets. The three men of that family were led by Bailey Xiongfeng to stand at the tent's entrance. They then saw that glorious silhouette as it slowly approached them while they faced the rising sun. The pupils of the Bailey family's leader dilated at the sight of this. That bright, shining, and golden youngster was the one who had been applying such great pressure on him. How is this possible? He's just a young brat. Why am I feeling such intense pressure? He felt as if Jun Moxie's dull-looking eyes could read every thought that was circling in his mind. He felt that his fate was under that youngster's control. In fact, he felt like he had no free will of his own. He felt extremely powerless. Why is a youngster who possesses a cultivation far beneath mine able to have such an effect on me? The third young master of the Jun family, Bailey Xiongfeng, realized that he felt uncomfortable to his very spirit. In fact, his heart had been sent trembling. So much so that he hadn't even realized when he had taken a step back. He asked in a loud voice in order to hide his uneasiness, "May I dare to ask why the third young master has come here?" However, even Bailey Xiongfeng had realized that his voice had seemed to lack any power in front of his counterpart. The three great experts of the Bailey family had fallen into a disadvantaged position the moment they had rushed out of their tent after having perceived that imposing murderous aura. In fact, they had lost the right to talk on equal terms. It didn't matter if they were spirit Xian experts or great masters, the result would have been the same. And that was because they had been forced to come out. They would have found themselves in a far better situation if they had been able to remain in their tents when Jun Moxie had arrived outside, since he would have had to take the initiative, and would have had to speak first in order to provoke or request them for their attendance. However, it was a pity that they weren't able to do that. Bailey Luo Yun and two other members of the Bailey family stood behind Bailey Xiongfeng. And they could see that Jun Moxie appeared very calm, yet arrogant. In fact, his aura seemed strong enough to force the entire world to submission. Yet, their eyes shone with a brilliance of fanaticism at this sight. And that was because this was the realm they had been striving to achieve their entire lives. This realm perhaps wasn't the greatest. And it perhaps wasn't the strongest in the world either. But it was a realm that entailed absolute confidence in oneself. And this was a realm of genuine pride. Bailey Xiongfeng had always been proud of not being a part of the herd. But he felt extremely inferior now that he compared himself to the exceptionally imposing attitude he was faced against. "I've come to look for you, Bailey Luo Yun. We had an agreement." Jun Moxie spoke up in a dull tone. He didn't take any notice of the Bailey family's leader even though the man was standing right in front of him. The young master Jun instead faced Bailey Luo Yun as he spoke. In fact, he even smiled at him faintly. Jun Moxie seemingly hadn't heard the question which had been asked by the spirit Xian strong Bailey Xiongfeng. Or perhaps he had disdained to even answer. This was a show of complete disregard, bare and blatant disregard. The lack of foresight from the Bailey family, and their attempts to destroy such a great asset had made Jun Moxie despise them. In fact, the Bailey family's doom had been foreordained as far as Jun Moxie was concerned. And that would be for Bailey Luo Yun. And for his own plan. Bailey Xiongfeng could feel the anger rising inside him. And he suddenly lost all sense of reason and self-awareness. He was a spirit Xian expert at this time. Something like this had rarely happened to him even when he was a sky Xian expert. However, this brat had thrown away the regard of his many years of powerful cultivation in an instance. The leader of the Bailey family's platoon couldn't understand what was going on. He took a deep breath and did his best to keep his raging anger in check as he shouted, "I'm talking to you, Jun Moxie." The Jun family's strength had risen very suddenly ever since the arrival of that mysteriously strong person who had killed the second great master. So, Bailey Xiongfeng tried to maintain some sense of appropriateness despite the fact that he felt extremely angry. The Bailey family couldn't afford to provoke the Jun family because of that person who stood behind them in support. Forget about the Bailey family. Bailey Xiongfeng knew that even the monstrous powers like the Silver Blizzard City couldn't defend that mysterious person. Therefore, Bailey Xiongfeng's tone had been somewhat warm even though he was extremely angry. "I was thinking of our bet. So, I'm here to relieve you of your 3 uncles. I was finally able to take out some time for this now." Jun Moxie smiled brightly and amiably. And it seemed as if he was waiting for a suggestion as he continued, "You're not in a hurry, are you?" Jun Moxie had again pretended that he hadn't heard Bailey Xiongfeng's words. This was akin to 2 back-to-back slaps to the latter's face. Bailey Luo Yun was suddenly struck by a realization. In fact, he felt touched as he somewhat understood the matter. Jun Moxie had been facing him, and had been speaking to him. In fact, the young Master Jun hadn't even glanced at the spirit Xian Bailey Xiongfeng. This indicated that even the leader of the Bailey family's troops wasn't much in his eyes. This point entailed that the Bailey family was nothing in Jun Moxie's eyes. What was Sky Xian? What was Spirit Xian? They were nothing in his eyes. Jun Moxie only had eyes for one person at this moment. Bailey Luo Yun. Why? Bailey Luo Yun had understood the reason very clearly. This young master understands me clearly. In fact, he even understands what I'm thinking. That's right. He's venting out this anger in my stead. For everything I've suffered at the hands of the Bailey family over these dozen or so years. He knows that I wish to leave the Bailey family in a blaze of glory and confidence. He also knows that I mustn't leave them by sneaking out like a dog. I'm a genius. I know my worth. I would have left the Bailey family long ago if I had wanted to. No family would ever miss an opportunity to have such a talented member in their ranks. But I didn't go. And that's because I want to claim the glory I deserve. I wanted to come out at the top, and not the bottom. And now, this youngster isn't holding back. He's offending the entire Bailey family for my glory, for my justice, and for the injustice that I've suffered. Who in this world would do so much for me? Jun Moxie hadn't spoken a single word of solicitation. But Bailey Luo Yun had already begun to admire him. Bailey Luo Yun's eyes flickered. He didn't say a word, but he made a solemn vow in his heart. Jun Moxie has delivered what I had requested. He didn't stint even a little when it came to fulfilling his promise. He has instead been extremely brash. So, I will also fulfill my commitment. In fact, I will spend my entire life in fulfilling my commitments. I will never stint from my commitment as long as I live. I will pledge my life in loyalty to him. However, Bailey Xiongfeng was already trembling in rage. Jun Moxie's downright arrogant attitude had left the spirit Xian expert to stamp his foot in fury. You may have some exceptional backing. The Jun family may have rebounded from its degeneration, and may have started to resonate with fame and glory. But a young brat shouldn't show any disrespect to the Bailey family because of that. Moreover, he certainly shouldn't show any disregard to Bailey Xiongfeng. Who can ever endure such a thing? The Jun family may have boundless future prospects, and no one would dare to mess with them. But this doesn't mean that they can bully people like this. Bailey Xiongfeng had never been a broad-minded man. This was obvious from the fact that his family had decided to act against their own future interests and had sent Bailey Luoyun to die. Moreover, Bailey Xiongfeng had personally taken charge of escorting Bailey Luoyun to his death in the southern Heaven City. These schemes had already revealed the traits and status of his character. Who couldn't understand this point? However, people with a higher affinity for such traits in character often tend to attach more importance to their reputations. A low snarl resounded from Bailey Xiongfeng's throat as he panted. He was afraid of the mysterious man who was backing the Jun family. So, he had been trying his best to keep his anger in check. However, it was a pity that his anger had continued to increase. And this had in turn increased the difficulty he'd face in controlling his anger. He gnashed his teeth hard, but his restraint finally collapsed as he said a few words. Jun Moxie. Bailey Xiongfeng would have probably turned to a fawning lickspittle if the young Master Jun had shown him any respect, just the way he had clasped the foot of the Xuan manor a few days age. This was because the Jun family's prestige was now greater than what the Xuan manors had been in the past. In fact, it had exceeded that by far at this time. So, how could an insignificant family like the Bailey family afford to provoke them? Unfortunately, the young Master Jun refused to notice that low snarl as well. In fact, it seemed that he hadn't even heard it. Bailey Xiongfeng seemed to be too trivial in Jun Moxie's eyes since he was still smiling softly at Bailey Luoyun. I know you're worried that your father will suffer problems at the Bailey family's hands because of you. He may even suffer unjust bullying and prosecution. But you needn't worry anymore. Jun Moxie was still smiling brightly. He lowered his voice, and it seemed that he was consoling Bailey Luoyun. However, he still seemed to be making a proclamation at the same time. I've never noticed the trash from the Bailey family. They're nothing in my eyes. He had lowered his voice, but his tone was still declarative in its make. I only wish that your value deserve my actions. Bailey Xiongfeng had already attained the spirit Xian realm cultivation. Jun Moxie had lowered his voice, but the spirit Xian expert could still hear him very clearly. In fact, the very act of young Master Jun lowering his voice left them to feel that he didn't hold Bailey Xiongfeng in much esteem. Bailey Xiongfeng heard a noise inside his brains. It seemed that something had snapped within him. His fists were clenched. His eyes had become red, and his face had become purple. He suddenly faced upwards and roared, "You've made me mad." Jun Moxie's eyes blinked for a while. He folded his hands behind his back and frowned. He then addressed Bailey Luoyun again. The weather isn't good. The sun seems so big in the sky, but the sky is still rumbling with thunders. It's truly terrifying. The sound of these words had hardly faded and a sharp wind blew as an extremely enraged Bailey Xiong Feng extended his hand to grab Jun Moxie. He believed that making minced meat out of this hateful brat was the only way to soothe his anger. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 399. Fight a Spirit Xian and Showcase Extraordinaire. Bailey Xiong Feng had completely ignored the fact that the Jun family had that mysterious and unrivaled master as their benefactor. He had seemingly ignored only that mysterious person in this equation. In fact, he felt that it was fortunate that the said man wasn't there at this time, and he believed that the consequent revenge wouldn't come knocking immediately after. However, Bailey Xiong Feng had overlooked another thing. And that aspect was fatal to ignore. The Bailey family's leader had fallen into a very disadvantageous position since he had stimulated the air around him with his movements. And he had unknowingly fallen into Jun Moxie's area of expertise as a result. In fact, Jun Moxie could have sensed the direction this attack was approaching from, even if he had closed his eyes and his ears. Moreover, he had been enraged by Jun Moxie. Therefore, he had lost the genuine edge of a spirit Xian strength. The white robe was floating beautifully behind Jun Moxie. His hands remained behind his back as he quickly dodged the attack and returned to his position. Then, the young master Jun's right hand speedily moved from behind his back and gently moved towards his opponent's palm. However, it seemed as if young master Jun had overestimated his abilities. However, a golden light flashed from his hand. It seemed more ghostly than real. The young master then spun around and stationed himself around 10 meters away. He had clasped his hands behind his back once again. Several jaws dropped as a blood burst out with a chi-chi-chi sound. The middle of Bailey Xiong Feng's palm was the source of this breakout. One move. It was just one move. The difference between the ranks of this youngster Jun Moxie and Bailey Xiong Feng is that of heaven and earth. Yet, he has managed to injure the spirit Xian Bailey Xiong Feng. This is unbelievable. Who would have believed this incredible thing unless they witnessed it with their own eyes? No one would have dared to believe it. Bailey Xiong Feng was an experienced man. However, he himself was unwilling to believe that he had been injured until he felt that stabbing pain in his hand. And this was because the one who had injured him was a brat of no more than 17 years in age. Bailey Xiong Feng is done for. 7 powerful experts had been hiding unseen around a corner. Their cultivations were very high. So, it was unlikely that anyone would be able to spot them. These experts had seen the entire scene unfold and couldn't help but sigh. The person who had spoken this was Donghua Wenjian. That Bailey Xiong Feng had long been done for. He had lost the moment sensed Moxie's imposing aura and came out to confront him. The solitary falcon commented in a cold manner. He was doomed to be defeated the moment he lost his temper. Bailey Xiong Feng's defeat can only be attributed to his own mistakes. He may have no morals, but he's still at the spirit Xian realm. So, he shouldn't have lost to a preliminary sky Xian regardless of how bad he is. Everyone nodded to show their agreement in a pensive manner. However, the solitary falcon was left dumbstruck the moment he finished speaking. In fact, the great master had been left terrified of what he had just spoken. He then suddenly cried out in fear. And his long hair stood up as he said, "A base-ranked Sky Xian? What did I just say? I haven't misinterpreted it, right? This is donghua. Dang it! When did this kid reach the first level of Sky Xian?" He appeared in shock as his eyes swept over Jun Wuyi and the three Dongfang brothers. In fact, the great master's eyes were reeking of a sense of extreme shock at this time. I clearly remember that this brat was still at the Jade Xian Peak on the day of the battle with the Xian beasts. He advanced to the first level of Sky Xian in a couple of days. He advanced 4 levels overnight. Is there any fecking justice in this world? Everyone suddenly became aware of that point the moment he made that statement. The others had realized the extent young Master Jun's cultivation had reached a long time ago. After all of them except for Jun Wuyi were spirit Xian experts. So, how could they not tell? However, they hadn't thought about this factor until the moment the great master had pointed it out. Consequently, the mouths of these talented people became round like an "oh" in the face of that issue. In fact, there were no exceptions to this reaction. That's right. Everyone saw that this brat was at Jade Xian Peak 2 days ago. We had praised his talent at that time. But he has advanced to the first level of Sky Xian in the blink of an eye. How did this happen? What words would someone use to praise him now? He was considered extremely talented 2 days ago. So, what praise could someone heap upon him at this point? The eyes of 6 among them turned and got focused on Jun Wuyi's face. Their thoughts were clearly discernible. You're his uncle. You must have known about this. You didn't tell us. But you still knew it, right? Jun Wuyi nearly fell off his wheelchair. Why are you looking at me? I genuinely didn't know. You don't know. I'm his uncle. But I had no idea either. This brat has a lot of secrets. God knows how many cards he has hidden in his hands. Everyone was stupefied when they saw that Jun Wuyi was unable to explain this. However, there was a wonderful scene playing out up ahead at that moment. So, they couldn't help but shift their gazes to focus on the fight. A first-level Sky Xian had beaten a Spirit Xian expert. This had toppled all established knowledge about warfare. In fact, this was something so rare that it hadn't been seen in a millennium. Bailey Xiongfeng was still dumbstruck as he watched the blood flow out from the center of his hand. In fact, he was at a complete loss. My hand. I've trained so hard since childhood. I could put my hands in a stove, but they'd still be durable enough to persist for a few hours. In fact, I can even block a divine sword's blade with my bare hands, and still not suffer any injury. However, I have a hole in my hand even though there is no sign of a weapon in my opponent's hand. Bailey Han Hai had been standing behind this entire time. However, his eyes had opened wide at this time since he had never seen his eldest brother in such a difficult situation before. Moreover, it was a young brat who had put his eldest brother in such a difficult situation. Bailey Luo Yun was standing in a calm poise. He too was startled to witness the scene that had unfolded in front of him. However, this result wasn't exactly unexpected in his opinion. In fact, this result had been ordained the moment Jun Moxie had arrival. And Bailey Luo Yun had realized that something like this would happen since he knew that Jun Moxie wouldn't act in this manner unless he had full control over the situation. The Southern Heaven City had become the Jun family's home ground by now. So, he had believed that many experts would have been waiting in hiding. And he had figured that they would have killed Bailey Xiongfeng once they were called upon. But Bailey Luo Yun had never imagined that Jun Moxie would decide to deal with Bailey Xiongfeng himself. Nor had he imagined that Jun Moxie would gain a position of absolute dominance. Jun Moxie is younger than me. Yet, he possesses such a great cultivation. Bailey Luo Yun had sensed that Jun Moxie's cultivation was better than his own a while ago. But he had never thought that Jun Moxie would be so far ahead that he would have reached the Sky Xian realm. Moreover, he had challenged a Spirit Xian expert even though he was a Sky Xian, and had won with ease. What is a true genius? Only Jun Moxie is entitled to be related to those two words. The other so-called geniuses of this world have been overshadowed by this talented and mysterious youngster who stands in front of me. This thought destroyed any pride which Bailey Luo Yun had given refuge to. Jun Moxie is the sole gem from the third generation of Tian Xiang's authoritative Jun family. And this young Master Jun is only 17 years old. Yet, his Xian cultivation is far greater than mine. In fact, the difference is like that of heaven and earth, one can't even mention us in the same breath. I have been content at staying at the Jade Xian Peak. Meanwhile, this kid who is 6 or 7 years younger is taking on Spirit Xian experts, and is actually beating them in such a convincing manner. What reason do I have to be prideful? Why should I act aloof? Bailey Luo Yun had been subdued in the true sense of the word. But Bailey Xiong Feng had been enraged on the other side. In fact, he had been driven mad. He was unable to bear his own defeat. I'm a Spirit Xian expert. So, I'm his elder in every way. I could have bullied Jun Moxie very easily. I could have taught him a good lesson, and it would have been fine as long as I didn't take it too far. I could have put him in his place. And then, I would have taken the matter to Jun Wuyi, and explained him the reason behind my actions. I would have then asked him to preside over the matter. I reckon that Jun Wuyi would have considered me to be a magnanimous man since I didn't bicker with a kid of the younger generation. Well, I at least wouldn't have incited a strong military reaction from the Jun family. After all, Jun Moxie had insulted my Bailey family first. And no one could have endured that. So, the fact that I didn't kill him on the spot would have reflected as a great sign of respect towards the Jun family. The Jun family is a noble family. So, there wouldn't have been a major reaction from their side. However, I didn't expect that I would be defeated like this even though I took the initiative to attack. Moreover, I was defeat in one move. How can I explain this? Do I have to go to Jun Wuyi and say, "Look, your nephew is such a bully. He hit me. I won't be able to live anymore." Bailey Xiongfeng's eyes had become round in a glare while hands moved like the wind as he launched relentless attacks. Jun Moxie's body seemed like cotton as it floated free and unhindered. And his hands moved as freely as the wind as he attacked back. Jun Moxie's training and foresight would have allowed him to avoid Bailey Xiongfeng's devastating attacks even if he hadn't made a breakthrough to the Sky Xian realm. However, his reaction had been sharper and his stance had become perfect after the breakthrough. Bailey Xiongfeng seemed to be attacking in a wild frenzy. However, he was constantly reminding himself that he only wanted to teach Jun Moxie a lesson, and didn't wish to kill him. And that was because the Bailey family would be destroyed if Jun Moxie were to die by his hands since they didn't have the power to defend themselves against that mysterious and powerful man's revenge. Bailey Xiongfeng was embroiled in hatred at this moment. But he only wanted to retrieve his honor. He never wanted to bring disaster to his family. However, he was unaware that Jun Moxie was also considering whether he should kill Bailey Xiongfeng this entire time. Should I kill Bailey Xiongfeng? Will it be worth it? The young Master Jun kept thinking over the question, and pondered whether it was worth it to kill him or not. Bailey Xiongfeng's style of fighting was powerful, bold, and tyrannical in the eyes of others. But it had 100 loopholes as far as Jun Moxie's eyes were concerned. Jun Moxie had skimmed through a wide range of fighting style in his previous life. And those fighting styles had evolved over thousands of years. However, even they had some loopholes. So, what would the mere centuries-old fighting style of the Bailey family be in comparison? Jun Moxie wouldn't have been able to think about killing Bailey Xiongfeng in the past even though he could have seen through his attacks. After all, the difference in their strength would have been too great. The strength of a spirit Xian expert was unimaginable for a normal person. So, this situation would have been something like the one he had been in when he had faced Dongfang Wen Dao in hand-to-hand combat. He had seemed to have prevailed at the time, but he couldn't have done much beyond a certain point. However, the circumstances were very different at this time. How could this Jun Moxie ever be compared to the one from that day? Another crucial point was the weaponry involved. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 400. Dealing a fatal blow to a spirit Xian expert. That, turning ordinary metals into wonderful gold, had genuinely allowed the young Master Jun to cut through iron like it was hot butter. In fact, there seemed to be nothing which he couldn't overcome. For example, he had only used his toothpick-like sword to make a hole in Bailey Xiongfeng's hand. And this was a clear proof of that. However, Jun Moxie was considering whether it was necessitated to kill his opponent at this time. Should I kill him? Should I not kill him? What's the advantage of killing him? What's the advantage of not killing him? What are the pros and cons? I need to consider this seriously. Bailey Luo Yun would have no choice but to obey me if I kill Bailey Xiongfeng. He will have no way out. If I don't kill him. Jun Moxie chucked since he suddenly felt foolish. Killing or not killing this man would be roughly the same thing. But he realized that there was one matter which was endlessly nagging at his mind. It was the condition that had been set by Bailey Luo Yun that day. And that was to kill everyone the Bailey family had sent here. However, Jun Moxie wasn't willing to do so. It wasn't that the young Master Jun had had some misgivings about the conditions after he had accepted them. It was just that Jun Moxie was unwilling to follow Bailey Luo Yun. What would happen if I promise to do everything he asks? Who will hold a higher importance in that case? This will have a negative influence on my authority. Jun Moxie had found himself facing a conundrum at this time. Bailey Luo Yun wanted him to kill his opponent. However, that was secondary. The real question was, did young Master Jun wish to kill this man? Bailey Luo Yun can request me to do it, he may even beg me to do it, but his efforts will be in vain if I don't wish to kill him. However, Bailey Luo Yun may plead with me to spare that person's life on the other hand, but I would still kill him if I wanted him dead. This had nothing to do with Bailey Luo Yun. This matter was related to Jun Moxie himself. Jun Moxie's body issued a hissing sound and his white robes fluttered in the air as his body sped up in an instant. He then changed directions 3 times in the blink of an eye. After that, he shot forward like a demon. Then, he quickly looped and retreated, and stationed himself around 15 meters away. He looked at Bailey Xiongfeng coldly. His eyes were brimming with an intention to commit murder. In fact, it seemed as if he was on the verge of dealing the final blow. Jun Moxie is going for the kill. Solitary Falcon's sharp senses became aware of the raging killing intention which had suddenly erupted out of Jun Moxie. Thus, he announced it in a dignified manner. He was the strongest amongst those present at the scene. The great Master Solitary Falcon's agility skills were world-renowned. And only he could discern the young Master Jun's moves at this time. The remaining people found it hard to see Jun Moxie's rapid movements, Even the three Dongfang brothers were no exception. The young Master Jun had quickly changed his position 3 times, and had attacked at 3 of Bailey Xiongfeng's loopholes in this process. Moreover, he had attacked Bailey Xiongfeng's loopholes in order to kill him. However, there was a chance of a last-ditch counterattack. Therefore, Jun Moxie had retreated to look for better opportunities. Xie had been paying attention to the developments since the beginning. So, he couldn't help but sigh. This youngster has been consolidating his position with every step. His strategy is extremely brilliant. First, he gained an upper hand by using his murderous aura to force Bailey Xiongfeng to show himself. And that move pushed the Bailey expert into a disadvantage. This kid's moves are so fast that I can barely even see them. The result of this fight has no suspense to it. The third young master has been controlling this situation from the very beginning. And he first provoked this fight. He then unleashed his killing intention instead of retraining it. And he started to use his words to a great effect, and managed to provoke and enrage Bailey Xiongfeng. In fact, he got the man to abandon common sense and judgment, and forced him into making mistakes. Then, he made that thunderous attack, and injured Bailey Xiongfeng's hand when he was in a chaotic state of mind. This allowed him to disrupt his opponent's rhythm. It was then that young Master Jun bared his fangs, and used his rapid speed to strike a fatal blow. This chain of events can only work in fight between 2 individuals. But this is also the most efficient method, and saves a lot of unnecessary effort. The third young master of the Jun family, the rumored #1 debauchee of Tianxiang, has turned out to be such a ferocious character. Xie's voice seemed textured with a sense of great admiration. And Jun Wuyi suddenly felt a sense of great pride and relief. But I don't wish to challenge this treasured nephew of mine again. I could learn a lot by training with him, but I genuinely don't wish to be beaten by someone so young. Dongfang Wendao still felt somewhat traumatic from the last time. He's not acting like a senior should. He's acting like a kid. I'm baffled by Bailey Xiongfeng's actions. Why is he even bothering with Moxie despite the seniority of his status? Why didn't he go to Jun Wuyi to seek justice? The Jun family is very honorable. And Wuyi would have never shielded any mistakes. Moxie hasn't behaved properly in this matter. But that doesn't even matter now. Bailey Xiongfeng would have to live in shame if he got defeated. And his victory would be no less than a joke. A spirit Xian expert harboring such a severe grudge against a 16-17-year-old is a huge joke. The voice of the eldest member of the Dongfang family was expressing his undisguised contempt. But he was already in a mess when he was forced to come out by Jun Moxie. So, this was basically a strife between the auras of the 2 men. And this couldn't have been sensed so easily by others either. In fact, we wouldn't have been able to detect it if our strengths weren't that great. The great master Solitary Falcon had extensive knowledge. And he quickly pointed out the key factor. Jun Moxie has completely grasped the moment. Moxie wouldn't have had anything to go on if Bailey Xiongfeng hadn't opened his mouth in the beginning. But Jun Moxie was able to use his aura to gain advantage since he spoke up first. Moxie then controlled Bailey Xiongfeng by making him increasingly enraged. After that, he acted to kill him. Bailey Xiong. Feng is too much, he didn't have any restraint, he doesn't have any. The muscles on Duanmu Chao Fan's big neck had started to pop out as he said, This, such a young man, has this kind of an aura. Good mother. Look, him, not rising. Sikongani clasped his head in pain. That incessant stammering was making him dizzy. Is your self-restraint any good? Wouldn't you be infuriated by Jun Moxie if we experiment and exchange your place with Bailey Xiongfang's? Sikongani looked at Duanmu Fan with disdain as he said, "It's fine to talk, but doing it is a different matter. Why are you boasting so much?" Everyone felt that this argument was reasonable. Any one of them would have been left fuming if they had been in Bailey Xiongfang's position. In fact, Duanmu Fan would have probably choked and died on his own stammer. That brat is too cunning. Pay heed. The most important part is coming. Solitary Falcon had been watching the fight this entire time. He called out to remind everyone to pay attention. Bailey Xiongfeng could feel Jun Moxie's cold and severe murderous aura quite clearly. And this sobered his hysterical mind. He could sense that an extremely dangerous attack was coming. In fact, his subconscious mind prompted him to use his unique skill, the Wild Dragon Palm. Strong aura whistled from within, and a figure came out from his hand and covered the sky. Each strike of his palm carried enough strength to crush a stone to rubble. And it rushed forward towards Jun Moxie with a rumble. The aura converged in his palms. It covered everything and crashed down. Jun Moxie's silhouette moved and dodged the massive canopy made by this attack. In fact, his movements were so quick that he left after images in his stead. The attack pressed down and crushed the image that had still remained where Jun Moxie had stood a moment ago. However, Jun Moxie's real body had already arrived in front of Bailey Xiongfeng by now. In fact, he had come face to face with his opponent. Moreover, he was smiling at Bailey Xiongfeng with his glistening teeth. His white teeth glittered faintly. They resembled the faint flash that is seen in the eyes of a hungry wolf on a cold winter's night. Bailey Xiongfeng was shocked. And he retreated with everything he had. However, it was too late. A golden light flashed, and a thin blood-red line splashed out. Then, Jun Moxie's figure retreated with a whooshing sound. Everyone saw that his figure had returned to its original position. Bailey Han Hai had been standing around 10 meters behind Bailey Xiongfeng this entire time, and had been watching the fight in an enraged frame of mind. But he issued a cry of shock when he saw that Jun Moxie and that golden light had already in front of him, and his eyes became completely round. Jun Moxie's two thundering palms chopped down on Bailey Han Hai's chest. And the Sky Xian expert's body shook thrice before his chest caved in. Who could have thought that Jun Moxie would mount a sneak attack on Bailey Han Hai while fiercely battling Bailey Xiongfeng? He was the real target. Bailey Xiongfeng wasn't. He doesn't wish to let anyone go. Then, Jun Moxie came to standing position before Bailey Han Hai, and turned towards Bailey Luoyun. He then smiled, and whispered, "I will fulfill your wishes. I gift these two men to you." Bailey Luoyun was silent, and his expression was extremely complicated. Bailey Xiongfeng and Bailey Han Hai stood upright at this moment. However, they were trembling even though they were standing upright. Moreover, they had a color of despair painted on their faces. Solitary Falcon sighed and muttered. 2 men, including a spirit Xian, were killed in an instant by the attack of a Sky Xian expert. And his white robes haven't even stained. This scheming and these kinds of movements have left me to gasp in amazement. I have no words to praise him. Bailey Xiongfeng stood still like a statue. He then slowly turned around and fixed his gaze on Jun Moxie. After that, he spoke up in a low voice. "Let me see that weapon of yours." Everyone had seen an arrow of blood shooting out of Bailey Xiong Feng. However, no one had been able to spot a weapon until now. Jun Moxie stood silently for a moment. Then, he turned his palm, and everyone was able to see that barely half a finger-sized toothpick-like sword shining in the sunlight. Bailey Xiong Feng smiled wretchedly and said, "I had seen your sword at your waist. And I had always been on guard against it. But I had never expected the real weapon would be in your palm this entire time." The 7 powerful spectators who stood at the side suddenly understood everything as they heard these words. So that's why Jun Moxie never used his sword. He had planned to use his sword as a decoy the entire time. The boy seems to have calculated everything from the beginning. Good attack. Bailey Xiong Feng straightened his neck and gave a strange smile. Then, his body suddenly slumped, and a slim fountain of blood gushed out of his neck. It shot out straight and traveled many meters as it shone brilliantly in the sunlight. Then, he went down like a sandcastle at a beach. Jun Moxie had cut his throat with the flash of that golden light. The Bailey family's spirit Xian expert Bailey Xiong Feng had died. Bang! Bailey Han Hai also went down in a similar fashion. A thin stream of blood slowly flowed out from underneath his body. That Sky Xian expert hadn't even had the time to say a single word until the time he was killed by Jun Moxie. "I have fulfilled your desires. Do you still wish to fight me?" Jun Moxie smiled as he looked at Bailey Luoyun. His white robes hadn't even been stained with blood during the course of these events. This story will be continued to chapter 401. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.